Welcome to our very first official town hall meeting for our beautiful town of Poetry. Over the last 9 months or so, we've had around 20 hours of meetings, which have been fairly informal in nature. Now that we're an official town, we need to be a little more formal. So you must be signed up by now to be able to speak. We have much to accomplish. With that said, we want you to feel heard, valued, informed, and connected to your town and its council. We welcome diversity of opinion and want minority views as well as majority views to be heard. We also appreciate mutual respect despite opposing views. I'm going to go ahead and read for our citizens' comment because it is new. Some of you may not have seen this. For citizens' comments, persons wishing to speak on any posted agenda item may do so when the individual item is open for consideration by the council. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless a longer period of time is allowed by law for use of a translator. Persons wishing to speak must sign up at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting by emailing contact@poetrytexas.org or by signing up in person at the meeting location from 6 to 6:30 p.m. with name, address, and agenda item on which there is a desire to speak. You must be signed up to speak during the meeting. Comments should be respectful with no personal attacks. To preserve the order and decorum of the meeting of the town council, any person who makes profane, slanderous, or threatening remarks or who becomes disruptive during the meeting will be asked to leave the council chambers, according to Local Government Code 3813 and 4205. Okay, we'll have our roll call to confirm quorum. Councilmember Terry Fowler.
Here.
Councilmember Tom Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Jaffe.
Here.
Councilmember Brian Benson.
Here.
Councilmember Simeon White.
Here.
Quorum is confirmed. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation, both led by Councilmember Terry Fowler.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time to come together and represent our city, Lord, and we just ask that you be with us tonight, Lord, and watch over this meeting, Lord. And I just want to pray over our council, Lord, as we start this new journey, Lord. I just pray that your wisdom be poured upon us, Lord, that you give us eyes to see and ears to hear, Lord, and help us to remember that we're elected officials and listen to the people. But Lord, help us to remember that we are representatives of you at all times, Lord, and we just thank you for your Son, Jesus, and it's in his holy name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Okay, we have it on our consent agenda, approval of minutes from the June 8th, 2021 workshop meeting. Consent by nature means there's no discussion, it's just approved. So all those in favor of approval of the workshop meeting minutes as written on from June 8th, 2021.
Tara, before we do that, there were a few typos in there, and since that goes into a permanent record, I wonder if we shouldn't correct those as part of passing it.
The typos can be corrected anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll need a motion and a second to approve, and then since it's consent agenda, you can approve that in one motion. If y'all want to approve the consent agenda, we'll give you one motion to approve consent agenda.
Okay, so what about the typos?
You can correct those.
Yeah, we can just correct those anytime. Right?
Yes.
I move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right. So motion to approve the minutes from June 8th, 2021 have been, the motion has been made and it has been seconded. All in favor? Say aye. Raise your hand.
Tara, as a point of order, we have not met prior to this, and so we have not agreed to use a consent agenda. And so we really need a motion going forward that says we're going to use that as a tool.
It's standard of practice. Yes, we have not made a decorum for our meetings, but I feel like we had so many other things that were more important than setting the decor
And,
for a meeting.
and y'all can certainly do that, as you're gonna probably want to put some just procedural rules together,
Mhm.
once you get going. So that would be an agenda item that y'all would talk about. It's, what cities typically do is they do minutes on consent agendas simply so they don't have to
Right,
continue making
routine
those
stuff.
motions. Yes, sir,
Right.
routine things, so.
So, for those of you who don't know, this is Patricia Adams. She's an attorney that we are looking into. She's donated. That's Patricia Adams. You're welcome to scoot up closer if you'd like.
Just keep staying.
So, we had a motion and it was seconded. I believe that we passed. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, so that motion is passed for the minutes. Okay, and Dorothy's been, she's working as our secretary right now since we had one. So thank you for Dorothy. Okay, so on the regular agenda item 1, discuss and consider action to adopt an ordinance establishing the office position of part-time secretary as a volunteer. Is there any discussion?
Yes. So the city secretary paperwork that you'd sent out, it is an ordinance, and I have reviewed it, and I'm sure the other council members have too. The only thing is, I'm not in a rush to do too much too fast. I do agree that this is a position that needs to be held. Unless somebody has an opposition to it, I would like to see us discuss on what the powers and duties of that office are, even though a secretary's pretty broad and they do a lot. But I guess what caught my attention, and it says number 2, to assist the mayor, and the mayor's duties as budget officer, so forth, so on. And that's okay. But if we look at the example from the TML website, it says the city secretary provides staff support for the mayor, city manager, city council, and so on. I just want our representation of what we're wanting as a secretary to more align with this. Because as of right now, I think there's so many unknowns that we really don't know. But I want that verbiage in there that they're also support staff to the city council, if there's no opposition to that.
Any other views?
So, I guess, too, just a question maybe for you, Tara, since you put this together. Is it understood that this is a volunteer position for the foreseeable future, or are you anticipating that there's going to be some expense on our part?
I anticipate that at least for the first year, I'll volunteer. We have been advised that typically towns do eventually pay that position because it's such an integral part of the town. It is the continuation of things. Even as elections come and go, the town secretary is one who remains. So I know that after talking with different mayors, they eventually do pay that position. But I know initially that is a volunteer, unpaid, because we don't have many funds, right? There were 13, my point is there's 13 candidates for a volunteer position, so surely there's a volunteer position for that one as well.
So when we get around to actually voting on this, I would move that we amend this to indicate that it is going to be an unpaid position until the council passes something that says that it's no longer an unpaid, just so that we don't leave that open-ended. And I concur with Terry that I'd also like to see, I did read through it a couple of times, something that just makes it more clear, because in past councils that I've been on, the secretary was equally available to all members of the council and mayor. So just make sure if we were to need something city-related, that person, I don't disagree with you supervising the person, they need to be, reporting to someone, but that they also be at our disposal should we have legitimate city business.
Yeah, I think I just drew from a couple different towns and what they had written, and then also the TML guidelines, so it's totally amendable. And there were things actually that I left off that don't apply to us yet. They may in the future, but, so, anyone else?
Yeah, I think we definitely need the administrative support, and I think that I'll work around to this situation. I see that it is already listed on the agenda as a volunteer position, but I wouldn't see a problem with moving forward, looking for somebody, and having the job description per se open to further amendment.
So what this ordinance does is just create the position, and then when we have a candidate or two, then we can create the details of that job, of, it's volunteer, how many hours, all of that is, so this just is basically saying, hey, we need this position for the town, let's create that through this ordinance.
I move that we agree to and pass agenda item 1 to create the position, and we'll also further amend the job description moving forward.
Is there a second?
For a second, I guess while we have free counsel here, or maybe maybe not. So, to move, obviously we can go back and amend ordinances anytime, but I'm not in a sprint race, we're in a marathon. So should we take the time to amend this before we pass it that says if the council wants to be supported by this position, that we should do so now before just passing it? I mean,
I was taking notes to try to anticipate an amendment would occur to this ordinance. So I think it's an important position to get it in place, because there are so many things, especially with budget, that's right on y'all's doorstep coming up. So what I wrote in here was under section 2 where it says appointment. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, my back's to you too. I apologize.
Okay, so what I wrote in here, trying to capture what y'all were saying, is if you look at like section 2 appointment, it currently says the secretary will be under the direction and supervision of the mayor, and I added, and will be a volunteer position until determined otherwise by vote of council. And then on the duties, I added in, really that second bullet point in the duties is saying that the secretary is assisting the mayor in the role of duties as budget officer.
sure.
So I added down here number 19, assist mayor and council, mayor and all city council members with the conduct of city business.
That works.
So if that would do it, and y'all want to approve that as amended, then you can do that, and we'll get that finished up for you.
Okay, but we have a motion on the floor. We
Withdraw the motion.
need to withdraw that.
Withdraw the motion. Second.
My motion is withdrawn.
So do we have a motion with the stated amendments?
I move to make a motion to accept this ordinance with the amendments stated by Patricia.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand.
All right.
All those opposed, and the order is passed.
Now, just as a point of order, Tara, so are you going to go out and start talking to people, potential candidates, or do you host this, or how are we going to draw these people in? So the question was, now that we've agreed that we need a city secretary, how do we anticipate we're going to find possible candidates, right? Not make any commitments, but how are we going to let people know we're searching and get a list?
Well, now that we have passed that, I think we can officially put that on our website, if that's made official, hopefully. And then we can post it at other locations, I believe, once we get a newspaper, that's on the agenda as well, then that can happen, understand? Okay, number,
As a point of order, we don't have an official website yet.
right, if that gets
Give us
done
half an
tonight.
hour.
Yeah. So, number 2, discuss and consider action to select a mayor pro tem. That is a 1-year term. It's to fill in the absence of the mayor or demise of the mayor. Do I have a nomination? That council member does retain the ability to vote, so that doesn't negate that fact.
So as a point of order, what establishes that that's a one-year term?
That's written in the local government code. I don't have that on me, but that is.
So we're not making that up, that's.
No, that is a one-year term.
And that position does what?
That position runs the town meetings in case of the mayor's absence or the mayor's demise, or. Should the mayor not be able to perform her duties?
There you go.
Do we have a nomination? It's just a one-year term.
Do I have to move, or do I just nominate?
Move to nominate.
I move to nominate Simeon White.
Is there a second?
I move to nominate Tom Anderson.
I'll second that motion.
You second that? Okay.
We have to vote on the first motion.
We have to vote on, are all those in favor of Simeon White as mayor pro tem, raise your hand.
We should be voting if failed due to a second.
Oh, you're right, it did not get a second, I apologize. Then he will second that. Okay. The motion for Simeon White to be mayor pro tem has been made and seconded. So all those in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Okay, and you can abstain if you'd like to. Okay, all right, so the second nomination is for Tom Anderson. And that has been made and seconded. So all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, so it is, we now have a mayor pro tem, Tom Anderson. It has been passed 3 to 2. Congratulations, Tom.
Big responsibility. You get to go to weddings and things. I was telling Tom jokingly that it's a big responsibility. He gets to attend weddings and things that Tara doesn't want to do, so we look forward to that.
I choked. Okay, number 3. Discuss and consider making poetrytexas.org the official website with emails through wix.com. It is currently being paid by volunteers, and it has been up for roughly 6 months. Any discussion on that?
Yes. So, I guess, I don't disagree with us taking over the website and appreciate those who got it started, but I'd like for us as the council to understand what the cost is, because we don't have any money yet, how we're going to administer it, how it's going to be maintained, and what the roles and responsibilities of the website are going to be going forward, so that we make sure that we've defined what's in and what's out.
Okay, so I apologize, I meant to get you in your packet some of the cost guidelines. Kevin, do you remember, it's like $26 a month for the monthly fee. It's actually very cost effective when you look at, we compared some of the government, so-called government websites, they cost thousands. And so this was very inexpensive version. And then also to have, they have different plans. So the plan we currently have allows three items on your calendar. And if you want to put a fourth, you gotta delete another one. So if we want to upgrade that so we can actually have more than 3 items on the calendar, it's a little bit more. In order to have 5 emails, if we were to have the 5 emails of our council members, then it's a little bit more, but still very reasonably priced compared to everything else out there. And it's very user-friendly. So I asked Lauren, who is our creative service person, who is currently helping us out on that. I said, well, can we just train our city secretary to do this. She goes, oh yeah, it's easy, it's drop and click. So that should, she said it's very, very user friendly.
To get you guys the emails for all of you guys, plus to upgrade the calendar a little bit so we can have more than 2 or 3 items on there, plus the website. You're probably looking.
You need
I'm
a
sorry.
mic. Sorry, we need
Currently, we have the website that has a calendar on it. I think quite a few people are utilizing the calendar just as a point of information for the town. Also, to get each one of the council members, which I think they're required to have an email address so that you can reach out and contact them. It looks like it's going to run all told around $70 or $80, $70 to $80 a month with the email addresses and the website itself, plus a little bit of an upgrade to the calendar. Maybe gives us, I think it actually gives us unlimited in that price package to do whatever we need to do with the calendar. And it's just a real simple site, just like she said, like the mayor said. We can easily train a city secretary to handle the functions of the website.
So who owns the domain name right now?
Right now, the domain name is in my name, and I am very interested in uploading that to the town. So
Is it for sale or is it?
it is it's a donation to the town of Poetry. I'm going to say, give it to me.
On that note, the poetrytx.org was owned for probably a decade by Lori Whitten, and she willingly donated it to the town, which is very nice. Just on that note.
Are there any laws that say how protected our website has to be?
We did look into that, and I know our tech person was kind of interested in that. He was saying, wondering if we had to have a backup drive and all of that to keep it all secure, and that is not necessary. With open meetings, the only thing that we're required to do is we don't erase any emails that are not like spam. Like we can erase spam, but anything to do with the town, we have to keep those on file. But it's perfectly fine to have it on Wix.com. I talked with the TML attorney on that.
And Wix has it, they back it up for us for not an additional fee. For $70 or $80, the Wix backs up everything.
Josh, is that correct, or do you know?
From the research.
Okay. So,
Because I don't think they back it up, you have to look at the website, so they'll think you're doing it. Wix uses Google Suites to use Google to do the emails, so it would depend on what Google has.
this is Josh Stankovich. He's an electrical engineer with a computer science major. He is our tech go-to person.
Wix outsources their emails to Google Suites. What the town council should do is pick one of the leading providers of cloud services for their Google, their cloud storage, for their calendars, for their emails. And that would be my suggestion, as opposed to a private company that just focuses on towns, because generally the entry fee is about $1,000 a month or somewhere around there. So you should probably go to Google, Microsoft to host your emails. I say Microsoft because they host the Exchange server, which one of the primary functions of the Exchange server is you can back up emails and keep separate copies. And that's what I would recommend.
There's a lot to consider in this, and I understand the Wix site is up, it's running, but it is non-official, so I understand the desire to move forward. Right now, I just think there's a lot up in the air, and I don't think that we necessarily have enough information to decide this. So I would actually move to table this one.
Well, and I don't disagree with that, Brian, with tabling the motion until we get a little more detail, but I think we need to follow up with, and who's gonna get the detail, right? Is one of us capable, or Josh or somebody, of putting together a little package of, this kind of reminds me of the free horse. It's not really free, there's gonna be some care and feeding.
Open to a committee considering it, but
Can we just,
I think we have a motion.
table, is it something that can be discussed?
Yes, so it has to be, it has to be seconded, and the only discussion will be on whether it's appropriate to table. That's the only thing.
I'll second the motion to table.
Okay, in lieu of what pressing business, so when you table, it's, I think we just want, I think the terminology is we want, instead of table, the terminology is that we want to postpone to the next meeting, instead of just table.
I don't know that we'll have the information necessary by that.
Yeah, I think we will. That's easy to get.
Before we vote, comments?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is we need a means for communicating. Whether it's, we can do it the way it is now with a table, or if it needs to be permanent, because I know in some of your emails, Tara, you've said we don't have an official website. My feeling is we need an official website, even if it's only temporary, so to speak, for a year or whatever, because there's two things. One is to get out notes on the meetings, which you indicated that we need to have an official website. And the second is we need to be able to recruit or encourage people to throw in their names to become the city secretary. This is a very important thing I think we need. Tara's overloaded. She can't keep doing this forever and at her own time and expense. She needs help. And I think in any way that this would keep us from getting out the message and communicating, and in fact, anybody here that wants to volunteer to be a secretary would be more than welcome to hear them. It's a very important position, and it's something that is urgently needed. So
Okay.
I'm not in favor of taking it.
Well, while I appreciate, so you're saying you want to continue table, to postpone? Is that what?
I'm not in favor of postponing it. I'm in favor of voting.
So let's go ahead and take a vote on the postponing to the next meeting, and then if that fails, then we'll continue.
You voted down.
But just, I agree with what's been said here. It is very important. We need to do it, but we also need to do it right. And having this type of website, such as through Wix, we wouldn't be able to do one of the most effective mechanisms that I believe in. That's the type of bulletin board system that is available on Nextdoor. We as council members can't talk on Nextdoor about town items, but if we don't have a website that we control, that we back up, that we retain the information, we can't do that there either. So I think that in order to have a good communicating website, we need to consider all of the things that we need to do or we want to do on that website.
We have a motion.
And I just want to clarify. So the only way that you can communicate collectively online via a website is if you have a bulletin board on there and you've set that up under the Open Meetings Act. It has to be on your front page or at least one click away. So that's an additional step that you'll have to have set up within whatever system. So if that's important to you, you need to make sure the system has the ability to do that. But I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear that you're still limited on communications you can have collectively under the Open Meetings Act.
Correct, and as I've read the regulations around that, it seems like the only way that we can meet with the standards of the Open Meetings Act is to basically have the website in our control, so we can control how it operates, how we back up the data, and we have to retain that data for 6 years, and Wix may or may not do that, but it's not something that we can control directly. So that was one of my main concerns.
So Josh, point of clarification, so when you say it has to be backed up by the cloud, is that something that could be done with the Wix site?
With Google, it probably could be, but,
So is that a pretty easy fix on that?
it would take some time to investigate. If you don't get it going, the ball rolling though, it could be months until you could get, effective communication. So you probably need to get the ball rolling, at least exploring email and then other types of documents.
I mean, when I had Lauren give us an analysis of other websites, they were started at $6,000 a year. Okay,
But for town government,
right, for Tom. So the Wix was the least expensive that we could find, so.
it's least expensive and it's probably one of the most user-friendly sites, so almost anyone could edit it.
Well, yeah. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I seconded it.
I have one other question. So I'm probably the least intelligent about website designs and internet and email. I do feel the importance to have an official city website that we can start communicating now, posting minutes and all that. So my question is, generous donation of the domain name, we would own the domain name. Wix would be the hosting spot for now. And if we chose to go another direction because it better fulfills what we need, that moves with it. It's not gonna be a big hoopla to change everything later. Yes, no, I'm seeing a few heads. I don't have a clue about how that works. Is that correct? So the motion to table it is due to, we don't think that Wix can handle what we need it to do as of right now. And right now what we need is a public spot to post agendas and meetings and I'm sure there's emails attached to it now. So if we had an info email that somebody could start communicating and you could cipher out who it goes to. Does that sound right?
I believe all that sounds right. My only concern is just to make sure that we're exploring all the options before we get the town signed up to anything in particular.
Okay, we have a live motion.
Okay, so there's the motion at hand is whether to postpone it to the next meeting or, and there's a second on that. So all those in favor of postponing, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, so it looks like that motion failed. So now I guess we need to vote to approve that.
Well, no, we need to make a motion.
A
So
motion.
I make a motion that we adopt poetrytexas.org as the town's official website, with other details to follow, and with the understanding, and you need to tell me if this is agreeable, that Tara or Kevin will continue to fund the website until the city is able to. And we promise we won't take more than a meeting to do that, but I do think we don't have any money. I don't even know how we would pay for it right now, but I do think, to Councilman Terry's point, it's important that we start, to me, this is the foundational stuff. This is driving the stakes around where we want the slab kind of stuff, so I think it's important, so.
Is there a
Make that
second?
motion.
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor of making poetrytexas.org the official website with emails through wix.com, currently paid for by volunteers, to continue that until next time, go ahead and raise your hand. And that motion has passed. Number 4, discuss and consider action regarding a resolution to select an official newspaper. We have Lon Aiken, a citizen, who is slotted to speak at this one. Lon, you're welcome to come on up.
What I have here is a question or two. Being the fact that we started this now, there was gonna be a farm deal, and not much money, and not many rules and regulations. My experience with rules and regulations.
Lon, can you speak into the mic, please?
My experience with rules and regulations, every time you make a rule and every time you make a regulation, you divide. It don't make any difference whether it's the federal government or the town of Fortress. Every time you make a rule, you're gonna divide. Now, we're talking about this newspaper, how much is it gonna cost? And what are the advantages of paper? And also, is it customary for a town to own a newspaper?
Point of clarification. So Ron, the reason the town has to make an official newspaper is because in order to put a bid in, we have to have an official newspaper. It's not that we're gonna create our own newspaper. It's just saying that we have chosen an official newspaper to represent our town. So for instance, let me go ahead and say.
Yeah, so it's basically just letting people know ahead of time where we're going to post town business. So where they would want to look to see what's going on with poetry bids, with job openings, with whatever. So we just have to pick. We can't randomly post information. So we might pick the Terrell Tribune or the Greenville paper or some other, but we need to formally announce to the public where we're going to post poetry's business items so they know where to watch.
Okay, I understand you now, but I thought we were trying to get in the newspaper business. And as far as this town here, don't need to be in no newspaper business.
We completely agree. Lon, and thank you, because I'm sure there's other people who had that question. Thank you. So no, we're not in the newspaper business and don't want to be the same.
Thank you, Lon.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we had, Mike Jaffe was slotted with writing that resolution, and do you have copies of that?
Yeah, this is embarrassing. No, I don't have copies. So basically, I drafted a resolution. I just copied some that I found online from local cities.
Okay.
One was selecting the Terrell Tribune, the other was selecting the Greenville Herald. So that we could go either direction. We just need to pick one. But no, I do not have a copy of that with me. I didn't know I was supposed to bring it.
So basically, is there any discussion before it's narrowed down? That's what the two main ones. It does now. I did send out this information sheet that it does have to be a newspaper of general circulation. It does have to be printed. It can't be an online. It does have to be a weekly output. So there are guidelines by the state of Texas that tell us, what we have to choose. So a newspaper of general circulation for the purpose of publishing legal notices. So is there any conversation, any discussion on that from the council members?
I guess, excuse me, Tara? Yeah, I guess my question is, the circulation, is the Terrell Tribune large enough to meet the legal requirements of
It is.
having? It is?
Mm-hmm. I see bids in there all the time.
Okay.
It is, yeah.
Well, I guess that would be my suggestion, is use the one that's closest. Other than that, it would be Forney.
And, okay, so your suggestion is that. Okay, so I can go ahead and read this since we don't have copies of that. Just resolution number blank, and that's a clerical thing, we can fill that in to answer that question. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Poetry, Texas, adopting a policy permitting the consideration of applications for primary, that's not it. Is there any other discussion? The Greenville Herald has, I'll just say they've been good to us. They came out to our fundraiser events, and they were actually there taking pictures, and they've been really proactive in supporting us. Thank you. Okay. Resolution number in 2021-06R is how he designated that. That's a clerical thing. That means June. It's a resolution of this year. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Poetry, Texas, designated the Terrell Tribune as the official newspaper and providing an effective date. Whereas the Texas Local Government Code, Section 52004, requires the town to designate a newspaper of record every year for the publication of ordinances, notices, and other matters. And whereas the Town Council of the Town of Poetry desires to officially designate the Terrell Tribune or the Greenville Herald, he's got one for each of them, as the town's official newspaper for the current municipal year. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Council of the Town of Poetry, Texas, that Section 1, the town council of the town of Poetry hereby designates the Terrell Tribune, or conversely, the Greenville Herald, a public newspaper in the town of Terrell, Texas, as the official newspaper of poetry, the same to continue as such until another is selected, and shall cause to be published therein all ordinances, notices, and other matters required by law or by ordinance to be published. And then it just says the town mayor and town secretary are hereby given authority to contract with Terrell Tribune or the Greenville Herald for said newspaper to become the official newspaper of the town of Poetry. Section 3, this resolution shall become effective immediately upon its passage. And then we put the date and then signature.
Yes, I have a question concerning both of them. Do we have an estimation for how many people they currently are given to in poetry, or a general idea of the ad cost for either one of those?
I know I have put ads in myself. They I don't know what a bid ad would cost, but that particular size, we've had estimates anywhere from $150 to $325 for an ad in the Terrell Tribune.
And do we know about the Greenville?
I do not know. So
Tar, can you say that again, what the cost would be?
I don't know what an official bid is, and what the cost of that would be, but I know that in placing ads regularly with the Tribune, it can be anywhere from, for that, like a 3-inch size, it can be anywhere from $150 to $325 roughly. So, I mean, it's not free. And of course, it goes by size, so.
Does it have to be in a paper publication?
The law for certain things like the bids, for instance, a depository bank coming up, in order for us to get a checking account, the government mandates that we have a bid in the newspaper. So we have to be able, in order to open a checking account for our town, we have to have an official newspaper and then a bid in the newspaper.
But it says newspaper, it doesn't say public paper. What I'm getting at is Forney has a paper that's published.
Okay, so.
So the question is, does it have to be a written paper, or could it be on the internet?
According to this document, and it does have to be written weekly. It can't be an online. It has to be a printed. This is from John Cornyn, Office of the Attorney General, State of Texas. So unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's fine. I would just consider moving towards Greenville. It has a stronger paper than Terrell.
I agree. I'm sorry. Have you signed up to speak?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I can't say anything about that.
I'm sorry. No, I can't.
How are we going to get, we don't get the Greenville paper. We get weekly the
Okay.
Terrell paper. That's fine.
Okay, Ted. I'm sorry, Tony. Yeah, so I know a lot of, may I have a show of hands? How many of you get the Terrell Tribune? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, how many of you get the Greenville Herald? Okay, so I guess online rules today. and according to the Attorney General of the State of Texas, we can't go from online. We have to go by printed circulation.
So I make a motion, Tara, that we adopt the Terrell Tribune as the official paper for the town's postings, etc.
Is there a second?
As-
All right. Okay, so all in favor of the motion to select Terrell Tribune as our official newspaper through that resolution, raise your hand. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, thanks for hanging with us. We've got a lot of little housekeeping things here. So, all right, number 5, discuss and consider a resolution to adopt a written policy to expressly permit the consideration of applications received by the town from bank, credit unions, or saving associations that are not currently doing business within the town's bounds, that's not hard, for selection as the town's primary depository. Do we have any discussion on that?
Yeah, can you tell us what that means?
That is legalese for, basically, we can start accepting applications on a bid process for a bank to have a bank account. And yes, she's going to have it now.
So state law mandates that your bank depository be located within the boundaries of your city. And since you don't have one of those, in order to publish and let somebody, a bank that's not within your city limits, you have to pass this resolution to say that you're going to consider banks outside of the city limits. That's what this is.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so since we're itty bitty and we don't have a bank, okay, so this should be easy. We need a resolution to say that we don't have a bank here. You make a motion.
Just as a question, so this is something we would need to use the paper to solicit bids, is that right?
Yes,
So that's another reason to have the paper? Okay.
yes. It's all government stuff.
I second the motion.
Okay. Okay, so all those in favor?
Who made the motion? You did?
Yeah. So all those in favor, okay, so we have a motion and it's been seconded to consider this resolution to permit applications received by the bank, credit unions or saving associations that are not currently doing business within the town's bounds for selections as the town's primary deposit. All those,
I didn't make this motion.
I thought we had someone who made the motion. Okay, is there someone who would like to make a motion to consider this resolution and adopt that?
I move to approve agenda item 5 as stated.
Thank you. Second?
Sorry, I didn't hear this. Can you say it again?
I move to approve agenda item 5 as stated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so item number 5 has been made a motion and has been seconded. So all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, number 6. Discuss and consider action regarding the town seal for use with official letterheads, emails, and correspondence. A volunteer paid for creative services for designs in the packets. There should be a packet going around. There's also pictures up here you're welcome to go look at. Now remember that this can be changed. The reason that we need a town seal is it's got to be on letterhead to make everything official, so it's kind of important that we get it going. And so I've asked the council members to pick their top 2 choices, and then we'll vote on those.
Can we use our official website to let the public vote on that? Because I really don't, I could care less if it's purple, green, or storage, or hairy veg.
And what was your question?
Can we use our website to let the people vote on them? Y'all just post them.
No, we cannot. I'm sorry. We can't do that.
Well, I'll start off my
Even though
vote.
that'd be kind of cool, but we can't on this one.
My vote under alternate topography is 1 first, 2 second.
So Tara, as a point of order, you said we have to. I mean, is that like spelled out somewhere in an ordinance or a rule? Or, I mean, we can't put out letterhead for the short term without pictures on it, or?
Well, I guess legally, and I guess we can legally,
I'm just thinking to the citizens, you know, like we're driving through potholes to come to the meeting. I'm not sure I care about a seal. Not that it's gonna cost
well,
anything. but
I do
just
know, I'm sorry, I do know that in a lot of the, information, I've been pouring in all this legal information. On a lot of them, it says you stamp it with the town seal to make it official. It's kind of a way to fish, like anyone in his neighbor could write up a document and put town mayor on it, right? Well, this is a way to have it embossed, you have it official to prevent something like that from happening.
Yeah, I would disagree that that makes it official. I mean, anything can be counterfeited these days with a $2 printer and an internet connection, so I don't know that it makes anything legit, but
I also believe, just looking briefly through it, that to send certain things to state, I'm pretty sure a budget report has to be stamped with this, for example. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure for some official business, we'll need that.
Want to speak to that?
So the seal is used when you're certifying records, and it usually comes with, it's embossed onto the paper, and then basically you have one person who's in charge of keeping that, and they're gonna do it on everything official. Any ordinance will be stamped, it gets signed by the mayor that y'all have passed. When you submit your approved budget, then it will get sealed as well. So it's just an official mark that gets placed on official documents. It's not something that you just use every day, so.
Thank you for coming.
I second that motion.
What did you? Okay, so have you decided on what you want to do? So is there a motion to choose one of these 8 samples?
we need a motion that specifies which seal. We need a motion that specifies which seal, so can we do just sort of an informal check on who wants what? Otherwise we'll be here all night with motions. Okay, Brian likes 4. Terry?
I'll vote with the majority. I don't care.
Tom, what's your favorite?
Alternate, that is alternate topography, 1 is first, 2 is second. And the reason is I like purple because I think you described that's an important color for poetry.
Yeah, it's also in the Bible, I like that. Okay, how about the other end of the table?
Select one first.
Brian?
I'm good with whatever gets moving.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve seal option 1 as the official seal for the letterhead, whatever else you're going to use it on.
Okay, to describe option 1, that is purple and
Purple
green.
circle, purple diamond, green poetry Texas, and I guess that's Harry Vetch, and that we were established in 2020.
So the pictures of those are up here again. I think it would stamp well, actually the one that they're considering, but the stamps are black and white typically, so. Purple is also the sign of no trespassing, and it's also the sign of Harry Vetch, which has been popular in this region for over 100 years. Or it was the Vetch capital of, poetry was known as the Vetch capital of the world, actually. And so that was one of the reasons that the creative service person chose that. So, and then green for agriculture. But okay, so we have, is there another one that someone else likes? Number 1?
The second of those dies.
So,
The second.
okay, so
Second to
Mike Jaffe has nominated number 1 for a motion to pass number 1 as the selection for the seal. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, so the motion for number 1 and the second.
Discussion.
Is there any discussion? Okay. So all those in favor of choice number 1 as our town seal, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, and that motion passes unanimously.
Somehow I just know that's the reason you guys came tonight, was to know that we picked the purple seal for our town. And hopefully Tara will promise not to put it at the entrances to poetry to attract people, because purple does mean no trespass, we shoot back, so.
I think most of the time it'll be black and white, but yeah, it is unique. All right, number 7. Discuss and consider action to create subcommittee of mayor and one council member and attorney with Kaufman and Hunt County judges, road commissioners, and attorneys to discuss possible interlocal agreement for road maintenance.
To be clear, this is just to establish the committee.
Yes.
That's right, I didn't see the question.
Okay, number 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brian's question.
He wanted to know if we were just establishing the committee.
This just gives us permission to go and seek an agreement for the roads.
So hot topic, probably the most important one we're gonna discuss tonight. So obviously we need those discussions, and I do wanna thank you for the work you have done in discussing it. You've made some big improvements this week on some roads. So the subcommittee, what I wanna discuss about this creation of the subcommittee is what does that look like? You said mayor, one council member, and whoever we decide is that council member is fine, but what's the subcommittee look like? Are we asking for citizen volunteers, or are we talking about appointments by each council member for representation?
Well, after discussing this with a couple of different attorneys, you have to be really careful not to get quorum, because if you have quorum, then you automatically have to have an open meeting. So in order to be effective with, their legal counsel, our legal counsel, the road commissioners, all of that, we need to have less than quorum. And
that makes perfect sense, but what are we talking about subcommittee members?
that's just the title of it. It
Okay,
just means we're gonna have a
You
mayor.
just want a mayor and a council member?
Yes. So, because I was advised by more than one attorney that if you get 2 and they accidentally speak about it to a third council member, you've automatically broken the Open Meetings Act.
I guess the reason I'm asking it, and I'm not pushing this direction, but this is my thought on this. So we have a citizen in our city that's maybe owns a huge paving company that's paved tons and tons of roads. So his knowledge is going to be a lot vast than ours. So when we go in there and they start talking about stuff that we don't understand, and I think everybody on the board would agree that we don't understand how to build and maintain a road. So there's one, we're getting an educated person that's going to be on our side because he has a dog in the fight. And number 2, there's members in this city that are certified accountants that can run the numbers probably quicker than they can, and that also have law degrees themselves that can review these contracts to make sure that we're represented fairly.
Would you like to make an amendment then to this?
No, I want to discuss what we want our subcommittee to look
No,
like.
I think those are valid points. Any other discussion on that?
So if I'm,
Wait, which number are we on?
We're number 7.
Yeah, and by the way, I guess my reading is the subcommittee would then be charged with possibly bringing some kind of a ordinance or an agreement to the council to vote on?
Yes.
That subcommittee would not make a decision.
No, they can't. They would bring back their information to us.
They would vet it all out, do all the hard work, and then bring it to the open meeting.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everyone's clear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree that we probably need more than the mayor and one council member. I would hazard against having too many people on the subcommittee because we all know how difficult it is to get people to meet together. So I would think limiting the subcommittee to another 2 people, maybe 3, would be about the far limit of what's practical, especially when you're meeting with other municipalities and towns, counties, etc.
Any other comment?
So I support Terry's thought of getting some other subject matter experts involved, but I don't know how we pass the ordinance here tonight with those positions open, but I would,
Just amend it.
at a minimum, I would
Amend it.
amend it to say subcommittee of mayor, one council member, attorney, and subject matter experts to be agreed upon by council or something. I don't know how we can do that, but again, I agree. I mean, if we're gonna go talk to Randy and them, they're sort of better armed than we are, so we want to take the scary, smart people with us so that we can maybe intimidate them into helping us.
Patricia, I was reading your bio earlier, and I hope I don't have yours confused, but you've done a lot of stuff for municipalities, right? So, this may be fairly easier, but how long does a typical interlocal agreement take?
To negotiate,
Generally what happens is that, and y'all are just starting, so you would generally have your public works director, and then you would have your mayor and, one other council member or a staff person, if you had a city administrator. You would have them go and meet with the county folks, and you would start talking about what you're able to pay, what you need done. They would talk to you about what services they offer, and then you would work out deal points, basically. The core of the rest of the provisions that have to go into an interlocal are governed by state law. And so we have to have certain things in there that basically say, everything's going to be paid from current funds, that everybody's getting good value for their money, and those recitals have to be true. So it's just a matter of working out what service can they provide and how much are they going to charge you. And, as far as just maintenance, you're not talking about construction, it would be helpful to have somebody that has that knowledge of, what a road base is supposed to be and those types of things, so that you would know different materials and what they were providing was going to help you with the problems that you have with the potholes and things. But usually it's just a deal point, it's business, and so it's going to take a couple of meetings to work out what y'all want, and then you kind of put the words to it with the interlocal agreement.
So we haven't chosen a law firm, and I see your firm's listed on here to discuss. But I don't think it would behoove us to spend our money if we have expert subject matter experts and maybe some citizens that have a law degree, just to make sure the basic contract. Now, I would think further on to this thing before we passed it that we would want a council that we're paying for to represent us to review it. But initially, this wouldn't be, if your firm was chosen, this wouldn't need something we'd be paying y'all to go to every meeting to discuss this, correct?
No, what generally happens is the subject matter folks get together and work out the deal points.
Okay.
And then they give, and generally, the county has an attorney on staff that you ask them to draft the first draft so that they incur that, and then your attorney would review that, and just make sure we check all the boxes.
Thank you.
So just as a point of order, and maybe she can answer for us, Tara, do we need to specify who those subject matter experts are? Is that an open meeting selection thing, or is the subcommittee
Yes.
able to decide?
Your agenda item is to vote tonight, so on the subcommittee members, so what you would ideally be doing tonight is to say that you want the mayor, and then decide which of y'all wants to volunteer to be on that committee as well. And then if you have a suggestion that we want one or two subject matter experts, and we're going to try to find those folks and maybe see if we have somebody who's an engineer or who's in public works or something that can help us. That's one of the things that, you can put that out for volunteers and then just kind of decide that's what you want to do. So your motion would be to approve a subcommittee with the mayor, council member X, and to have two subject matter or one subject matter experts in public works or engineering and have a volunteer.
And they don't have to be named in the motion.
They don't. You could just go
We
ahead and
can
name
decide
that
that
one
as a-
citizen. I mean, ideally, you would name that citizen at some
But we
point, because
haven't talked to anybody
if
else.
5 people volunteer, you're gonna have to come back and determine who you want. Hopefully you have 5 people
So
volunteer.
would we need to name the council member though?
Yes, you do need to name, because y'all are here, so.
Okay, so
Do we have a nomination for that council member, Scott?
Tara, I just point out, I'm a licensed professional engineer. I'd be happy to do it.
Well, I second that.
You second?
I'll make the motion that Anderson serves on the subcommittee with the mayor and 2 subject matter experts.
Okay, so I think
we need a
we
motion.
do it separately, so I believe.
Yeah, I think we need a motion to amend agenda item 7 to specify that the subcommittee will consist of mayor, councilmember Anderson.
But that's not a motion.
On the motion right now, though, we have Tom is up, so let's vote on whether we're gonna vote for Tom as the council member, and then we can amend the rest of that, I believe. So, all right, so Tom Anderson has been nominated and seconded as the council member who would be in the subcommittee. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, and it passes unanimously. Okay, so now we need a...
Tom, would you like to give out your phone number?
All right, so,
So we can make a motion to amend the motion.
yes,
We shouldn't have done
amend.
that. It's not going about this right. Number 7 is not a motion, it's an agenda item. The motion was made to make Anderson, Mayor Tara, and 2 unnamed people. That's the motion. Number 7 is an agenda item.
Okay,
So we didn't need to amend the motion. We made the motion right the first time.
Okay, so let's go,
But it's been passed now, so now you have to amend it. No?
Make a second motion.
I'm expecting a second motion on that. And so we break it up so it's clear. All right, so is there a motion to have subject matter experts? 1, 2, 3, how many do you want? Is there a motion for that?
How many do we want? As a discussion. I feel 2's good. Yeah, I also
Okay.
feel 2. Are they gonna be appointed by us, or are we gonna seek volunteers, or can we appoint them as a council without an open meeting?
No, sir, you'll seek volunteers and then you will appoint them.
And then we will have to vote on it in an open meeting,
Right,
saying
unless
this is
you-
the nominations that the council's made.
Unless you want to say that the mayor and the council person can look at those volunteers and select 2.
Because they're not a quorum at that point.
Right, yes, sir.
That's fair enough for me.
You want
That would get the ball rolling a little faster, probably. Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion to seek volunteers and that the mayor and council member could select that from the volunteers? 2, I think, seems to be the number. So is there a motion for that?
Yes, I'll propose that motion.
Okay, is that seconded?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to consider the subcommittee, Tom Anderson, myself, and 2 subject matter volunteers that we can select and appoint. So that is on the table to discuss a possible interlocal agreement for raid maintenance and bring that back to the meeting. So let's go ahead and vote on that. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, and it passes unanimously. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we have a 5-minute recess. Is there a second? Or
Second.
okay. Recess, 5 minutes. Okay, we'll resume our meeting. Everyone get a bio break? Okay, thank you. Okay, so, number 8 on our agenda is discuss authorizing a subcommittee comprised of mayor and 1 council member to negotiate on behalf of the town and possibly bring an interlocal agreement of both Hunt and Kaufman counties regarding law enforcement for consideration at a future council meeting. Is there any discussion?
This just pops into my head, Tara. So would we want to extend that to include not just law enforcement, but also fire, since they're kind of related?
I think that's a whole nother ballgame. I have been working with the fire. I don't know if I can talk about this. I can't talk about this. So that's a whole nother topic. Sorry, we can't talk about something that's not on the agenda.
So just to speak of that, fire districts have ESD, emergency service districts.
We have to refrain from talking about fire since it's not on the agenda. I'm sorry.
Why?
Because that's the
It
rules.
only says law enforcement.
It only says law enforcement, and that is a whole different.
So are we talking about law enforcement in our city to conduct traffic stops, or are we talking about law enforcement?
I had on there sheriff and then the legal department changed it to law enforcement, so I don't know why exactly, but, that in my head was the, sheriff's department.
Well, but I think that's fair because DPS does a lot of coverage out here as well, so we don't want to exclude them.
And that's a valid point.
Just like to say that I'd be very interested in being in that subcommittee. That's one of the things I mentioned during the candidate speeches was the need for some law enforcement. We could use it as additional income. Kind of done some research into that, looking at part-time law enforcement, sometimes shared between different municipalities. There's ways to do it cheap, actually ways to earn money on it. I do find it is very necessary. It's a topic I highly value and would like to participate in.
Just as a question, isn't the sheriff out of Hunt and Kaufman County responsible for responding to law enforcement issues, even in the city right now?
It's a gray zone because we do not have an interlocal agreement, so we have to just solidify that.
So they don't have to come and take care of the problem?
It's a gray area. You want to speak to that?
Okay, so you've incorporated now, so that means that you either have your own police force or you contract with the county to have a police force. So you've taken what was county jurisdiction and you've incorporated that into municipalities. So that's why you'll need to proceed with getting an interlocal with an agency that would ordinarily be providing, and that's probably the easiest because they're already doing it.
But there's gotta be some amount of time that's considered as transferring. Obviously on November first, Hunt County's protection did not stop in the
Right.
city. They'd be looking at negligence lawsuits all day long.
Right.
So there's gotta be some understanding of a transfer of power or interlocal agreement. So I'm not saying we don't move forward with that, but and I don't think you would, but I don't want that to be used as a scare tactic. We don't have police service right now, because that can't be
Well,
true.
that's why I didn't want to talk too loudly.
Yeah, I understand.
Because you do, really, and there are mutual aid agreements, and that's the other way that you can handle it. It doesn't mean that you're going to be paying for those services, especially now as you're getting underway. I mean, all jurisdictions have mutual aid agreements where they're agreeing to assist each other. So you can have, I don't know what the sheriff's departments are still doing. I imagine they're continuing to do what they've always done. So just now that you're an incorporated city, you've got to
We need
take
to
those
start.
steps.
Yes.
With the interlocal agreement, though, correct me if I'm wrong, if, say, the sheriff performed a traffic stop here and there was a fine assessed, if it's in our city limits, if we have an interlocal, we can share the fine, but without an interlocal, it stays with the county, is that correct?
No.
They ain't sharing their money.
No.
It goes to whatever court it's gonna get filed into. So there's a jurisdictional issue on court. You don't have a municipal court, you don't have to have one. You could also have an interlocal with an adjoining municipal court, and then y'all could do something to separate out those fees and fines. So there's more to it, I think, than just them starting to write tickets within your corporate limits.
Thank you again.
Yeah, my understanding is if you start writing tickets, then you have to have a court that they have to go to, so then you have to have a municipal court, and then you have to have legal and all that, so it ends up, being a costly thing. So that may be something to consider though, but I know I have talked with Sheriff Terry, just in greeting, and he's eager to get something going, so that's why this is on the agenda.
Well, and just as a point of opinion, I was on a council in a small town south of Dallas that derived most of the town's budget off of the highway. And I hope and pray that we never become, Austin actually passed a law because of that town, that a town cannot derive greater than a certain percentage of their budget from traffic stuff, because it just gets out of control. You send Barney Fife out there with a bullet and a gun and he just starts throwing everybody in jail, so.
So is this agenda item that,
So we need a motion to,
what are we discussing now?
well, number 8, we need a motion to authorize a subcommittee. We're authorizing a subcommittee, so we need a motion to authorize a subcommittee. And we could amend it if we want to, or we have a council member, is there a nomination on the council member there? Maybe,
I don't know if I want a subcommittee, because I don't know what the subcommittee is discussing. That's what my question is. Are we discussing an interlocal agreement with the counties to continue their service, or is this subcommittee gonna go out and look for someone to come in here and be 45? What's the committee looking for?
so the wording here is to bring an interlocal agreement of both Hunt and Kaufman County, to possibly bring an interlocal agreement with both Hunt and Kaufman counties regarding law enforcement for consideration at a future council. So it's just opening the door, like, okay, we can have a meeting that's not quorum, that's not in a town meeting. We can have a meeting to just start discussing what the options are.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's just,
so this
it's
committee
just,
is not to discuss
it's-
getting vendors in here to.
No. This, my understanding is, this is, you know, they really want us to have something in writing, right? We need to legalize all of that, so we have to get that going. And this is a step in the right direction. So there will be no decisions made until it's brought to an agenda item in a future council meeting.
So, Simeon, with that understanding, are you still interested in this? If it's not to establish local law enforcement, it's simply to figure out what their obligations are for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. It's just the research of that. I'll throw my name in the hat too. I know the sheriff and Hunt County have relationships with some of the sergeants, so I'll throw my name in there.
Okay, so we have a nomination for both Simeon White. Is there a second for Simeon? Consider Simeon White as the council member to negotiate on behalf of the town, or maybe we open it up to 2. Is that a possibility as well? Okay, it's a possibility since they both have interest. I don't have a problem with that. They could both bring different things to the table. So, do we have a motion to amend the item number 8?
Just a question, I didn't understand, is Terry, we're nominating Terry?
Okay, so on here it says 1 council member.
Yes.
But we have 2 council members who are interested, and there's nothing that says that we can't have 2 council members. So we need a motion to amend number 8. We need a motion to go ahead with that, if that's agreeable.
So I make a motion that we amend agenda item 8 to read, subcommittee comprised of mayor and 2 council members, Terry and Simeon, with the understanding that any agreements that they create would have to be approved by the council before they would go into effect.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, so all those in favor stated the amendment as Councilmember Jaffe stated. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, and it passes. Okay, moving on. So number 9, discuss and consider citizen committee with 1 council member to give council recommendations for select a solid waste vendors in our area and authorize negotiation and execution of solid waste service agreement or agreements. This is a citizen committee, so that means that can be a number that we decide upon. So this is throwing it to the citizens with 1 council member kind of to keep it all going. So this is a citizen committee, and I think we can take nominations here. Is that correct? On the floor? Okay, so that's a lot. So, any comments?
So, Tara, I feel like we had our workshop last week. I feel this is sort of started with an assumption. And I want to make sure that we don't let it grow too much of a life before we figure out whether we really want to do this or not. I know I've heard a number of dissenting opinions on this whole thing. And would it preclude people from continuing to use their vendor of choice? Does it give them an exclusive? You know, would we expect to follow up with an ordinance? And I know we have to do an ordinance to do that. You know, I just want to understand where we think we're going with this before we, I don't have a problem with people going out and talking to them, but I don't want there to be an expectation that what they bring back we're going to pass.
just as a statement of clarity, I didn't get on the city council to tell people who they have to have their trash service. So, you know, I would definitely hope that the option remains open as long as it's met within the legal bounds. People, I think, should have more options, not less.
Tara, I want to ask you a question personally because you're probably the most educated on this. So I hope I'm not wrong. I think it was Blackjack. I kind of called him out on, he was talking about his exclusivity contract with the city of Crandall that's upcoming. And that's kind of where I was at on that whole meeting. Are we looking for exclusive contract? Because obviously I'm a no vote. I will not support that whatsoever. We're keeping poultry. Or is this something, because you mentioned revenue generations from this, is this something that you want to put before the city and say, we have this vendor that will pay us a fee if you so choose to use them? Because I will not support an ordinance to make an exclusive contract. And I don't think that's where you're going with it, but I just want the clarification.
So we're required to address the situation, to address this. So that's what we're doing. I think from what I'm gathering, not any of it, well, I can't say I know one person on this council who might be for that, but for mandating, I personally don't like that idea. I think that with we talked about last week was we had 12, I didn't realize it was that many. We have 12 different solid waste vendors on our roads every week. That's a lot. And our roads are the number one complaint I hear. Number one, hands down. So do we want to allow 12 different vendors with heavy trucks? Just a question. Do we want to, as a town, allow 12 different vendors tearing up our roads? I'm just putting that out there. I don't, it's open-ended. It's really open-ended. That's why I'm throwing it back to the citizens. Okay, potentially here. I want to hear what the citizens want on that. Do we, some towns will limit it to 2 or 3. Some will, you know, I mean, we decide, right? So it's just open-ended. I don't have a set end on this. I'm just saying, what do we want? So that's why I have on here to throw it back to a citizen committee. I really want to hear what they come up with. So what is the answer? Do we continue to allow just any 12 different vendors on our roads every week, and then we're paying more to fix those roads? So as I mentioned last week, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So do we want to keep throwing money at our roads, whether it's Hunt County, Coffin County coffers or our town of Poetry coffers, going to fix those roads? What do we want? What is the smart way to do that? Do we? I know we want to be good to our people. You know, I love freedom. Is there a balance? Can we? I love free market too. Is there a free market way? One of the vendors, I think Ameritex, says, okay, if you get 325 people signed up, it's $20 and $4.50 goes through the town. That's half of the population, roughly, okay, give or take a few. So can we do that free market? Let's let the free market rule, okay? That can be a free market thing. It doesn't have to be a mandate, okay? So can we, as a town, unite and get the best deal for you, the citizens, but then also give some revenue to the town to help fix those roads? So it can be a win-win, and I don't think it has to be a mandate.
So your basis for this, Tara, last week and now was that we are required to provide some kind of waste management plan. I'm going to guess that that's a safeguard the state put in place to ensure there aren't parts of the population that do not have access to trash. So we have 12. So surely with 12, everybody here is getting their trash picked up. I mean, I don't see any trash problem around Poetry. So again, I appreciate what you're trying to do with the roads. I would be in favor of when the road committee goes out there and starts figuring out what's going on, let's let other experts, I mean, we've got the papers, but let's let our own personal experts kind of come back and give us, because I think there's other ways of approaching this. We could weight limit the roads. I mean, we can do some different things to maybe avoid this without making it seem like we're trying to impose our will on other people.
And I agree with that, Mike, as well. But The governing policy is Texas Health and Safety Code 363.113. And it says that we must attend to this establishment of solid waste management services, each county with a population of more than 30,000, and each municipality, which is where we fall, shall review the provision of solid waste management services in its jurisdiction and shall assure that those services are provided to all persons in its jurisdiction by a public agency or private person. So what I'm seeing is that this agenda item that we're considering is just making sure that we form a subcommittee that ensures that we're taking care of business. That's all I'm seeing at this point.
Well, I guess my issue is, though, it's to select a solid waste vendor. And if their purpose is to select a vendor, that sort of presupposes.
It's plural. It's for plural. Vendors.
Okay, so
Vendor
select
or
solid waste
vendors.
vendors.
It's very open. And it's a recommendation. It's not an action, it's a recommendation all. So the citizens could get together and they could investigate and decide what is the best recommendation they want to give the council.
But it also says, and authorize negotiation and execution of a solid waste service agreement. So they're able to go out and go into a contract on our behalf. And if they can execute a solid waste service agreement, they're.
Okay, so that was amended by, I think, one of the attorneys. So we could just amend that if you'd like.
Yeah, as I read it, sentence diagram and all that good stuff, because I'm a freak. I thought that the give council recommendation for action, that was the cause, and then recommendation of action to select and authorize. So the the committee would be to give the council a recommendation for selecting and authorizing and negotiating and executing, but they wouldn't do it themselves. Their purpose is to provide a recommendation. I'm all for the clarity there.
Right, and I don't have a problem with them having the power of negotiation because they need to get pricing data for us. So that's fair. They just can't execute any contracts because we're not sure we even want a contract.
Well, that's a given. I believe, a citizen committee cannot make that decision.
Yeah, and I'm not really, I'm not really in favor of them even negotiating. I understand they need to get pricing information, but you can get pricing information without going into negotiation. I would just want them to stick with getting the information and making a recommendation on the information discovered.
So I have heard from numerous people on this. There are several who feel like that 12 is too many. Now I'm just speaking from the number of people that have approached me with this. So, but in a free market, can we make it a deal so that that people want to switch to that and be a win-win?
As a point of order, though, is that what this is talking about? I mean, we're talking about a subcommittee, not what they're going to be talking about anyway.
Well, but we're also going to be soliciting citizens. So if there's citizens who are interested in that, we can nominate them tonight. Is my understanding. So is there a citizen, I'm just put out there, is there a citizen or a few citizens out there that are interested in this enough to be on that committee?
Think of the perks.
So not everyone at once.
That's why we got you guys.
So the monkey's on our backs.
Yeah, we need some force multipliers. We're gonna figure that out pretty quick.
Yes, well, okay, so, yes, we did get information from 8 vendors, and it was, I thought very good, a lot of it. So, and some of it was actually, the town could, I mean, just a half from Ameritex, the town could get $17,500 in revenues. And that's a $20 a month service.
We did get information from the vendors the other day. What we would like is information back from the citizens. So this committee, however the committee would, I mean, you know, within legal bounds, but how the committee would want to get that information back, understand what the desire is, and make a recommendation back to us. That's what I'm seeing in it.
Tara, I believe, don't we have to have an ordinance, a solid waste ordinance, that then would set the ground rules for whoever is being considered? I like Lowry Crossing, you know, you give me information on Lowry Crossing. They had an ordinance which laid out the ground rules, which then went out to the various potential trash vendors, that then they had something to come back on, because it had the legal issues as well. Lowry Crossing was very legalistic, I thought, but it laid it out so that everybody knew what, whoever was bidding on the trash, here's what they were liable for, here's the conditions and all the things other than the price.
So my understanding is that as a town, we can mandate that, but we do not have to. Is that correct? But it's kind of a iffy, okay, she's wincing here.
What generally happens is that a city they put out bids and they have a solid waste provider. And then with that one solid waste provider, you have an ordinance and you have a contract. And in that, you can specify you can only have trucks of a certain size and certain weight, and that relates to your roads. And you regulate how many times they come in and provide service. You negotiate a price based upon the fact that you have a lot of customers. So it sounds like you've got somebody who's sort of trying to make that offer. I can say I've never had a city that had more than one of those, because usually for solid waste vendors to provide you with a deal, they want to know that they've got all the business mandatorily within that city. So if you could get people to agree to it, I don't think there's an issue with doing it. I'm just not sure that we would be able to get various solid waste vendors to all agree, because they wouldn't know what share of business they had and they wouldn't know how to structure their pricing.
So Patricia was at another town meeting last Tuesday. So last Tuesday we had a meeting, and we did have 2 or 3 that did say they would be willing to work, which was amazing, I thought. And so they're open to that. And one of them said, "Hey, we get 50% of the population. That'd be 320." They put the number out there, 325. Then we would, you know, the town would get 17,500 in revenue to help with roads, and then the cost per citizen would be $20. There were others that had said I think Reed was willing to work with negotiating a 5% type franchise fee type also, and his cost was very, it was just very competitive. So I know in Forney, okay, so I had a dumpster in Forney, and it cost me $75 a month. When the town of Forney decided to go with the mandate, it jumped up to $99. I was not happy. It was not even competitive. So if we can get something that's competitive, I've heard anywhere from, $19.95 to $38 a month. Okay.
To meet the statute, if we have to, from this standpoint, get going, doesn't the council just need to pass an ordinance that there has to be a certified trash pickup? That would mean that everybody inside Poetry has to have a trash pickup. Legitimate. At which point we can later move through everything that we're trying to do as far as.
Okay, so we're not supposed to have a citizen comment. I know we opened it up a little bit because we need citizens. This is talking about citizens committee, but I have to be fair.
So the main reason for a franchise is so that you get paid for the use of your roads. So if you have multiple folks that are willing to come in and do that, you do have to go through an RFP process. You will have an ordinance in place that says, outside of this ordinance/contract that you have with the solid waste provider, that says you are mandated to use these approved services. So if you have 2 or 3 vendors that will enter into these franchise agreements with you, that's why I'm saying this is what I've not seen before, because typically it's just one. I can see where maybe you might get a couple to agree, but I don't know, because I've not dealt with it, what that does to anybody else. I mean, if you have 2 different vendors that are willing to enter into an agreement with you, and maybe they say, when we get up to X number of customers, we'll begin to pay you at that point. I would say, you know, you need to upfront get some money for them coming in and using your roads, because they have big trucks and they're gonna have wear and tear on the road. So you might have a couple that do that. I don't know what that does to the rest of them, because if you're gonna have 2, then it's gonna be non-exclusive. And if it's non-exclusive, you know, then it means anybody can come in, so.
Patricia, so I had to go back and look at your resume because I knew it was overwhelming, way more important than anything I'll ever write on my resume. And lots of cities, City of Plano, Little Elm, Arlington, Garland, and very impressive. This is a lot different, and I appreciate everything you're giving us, and I want to continue to ask you questions. But these people love their trash service provider that they have. These people love free enterprise. So for us to come in here and try to squash anybody and pick 4, we're going to make 8 vendors mad and 25% of the population. So my question is there a way to just put a franchise fee, make a registered vendor, so if you're going to be a vendor in the city, you pay the city $25 a year, and you pay us a fee on every container you pick up, as opposed to having exclusivity or 4 vendors? Is that a possibility, to just have them register as a vendor and then them pay per capita if they continue to work in the city to help pay for the roads? It's probably not going to be as much revenue, but we hadn't squashed free enterprise, and we hadn't squashed these people's trash service that they've used for 28 years.
Well, and I think you can, whatever you can get folks to agree to,
That's,
you can do. I mean,
does that ordinance sound unreasonable for something new like this? It's
No,
so contentious. This is contentious.
that's
I
what I'm
promise
saying.
you.
I live in the country, okay, and so we have various different providers, and we're happy that we have various
Yeah.
providers, because we can get a better deal. So a city franchise system, franchise ordinance is a very different process. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. You do have to make sure there are solid waste services provided and being utilized within your city, so that you don't have people, you know, doing things with their burying trash and things like that. So you do have to mandate that everybody's gonna use a solid waste provider. If you can get folks to agree, then, you know, wonderful. You know, I just will say, and I mean, right now I represent a number of different sized cities. I was actually last night in Collinsville, which is a little city. And so everybody's needs are different. You have to make sure you're checking off those legal boxes, but you also get some latitude to decide how you want to do that. Like I said, I've just never seen that, because I don't see solid waste providers agreeing to that. You just may be in a unique situation with some of the smaller ones. You're not gonna have a Republic or an IESI that's
But we
going
don't
to
want
agree
those.
to that.
Those are
Right, we're not gonna have
50,000
that.
pound trucks that we don't
Right.
want, unless somebody chooses to, but yeah.
So the hard job of the council is to do what's best for the bulk of people and what's best for our area. So, I mean, we know that we can't please 100% of people. That's just impossible. So, again, the question at hand is, what is best for our roads? What is best for the bulk of our people? You know, so are we, you know, I'm trying to give the citizens a voice here with a subcommittee to the citizens. So
So it's a little bit of a point of order, Tara. Do we have anybody on the council that's interested in leading this subcommittee? Does it have a owner? Because we're not getting a lot of response from the audience. Do we have any council members that want to run this?
it's out of order. I'm sorry, Lon. You're set to speak on number
Ask a
11.
question, I was just gonna ask.
Number 10. but this is the council question.
Okay, I make a motion that we table this.
Till next meeting?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
My second.
Okay, so we have a motion to table the Citizens Committee to give council recommendation for action on solid waste vendors in our area. It's been made and seconded. All those who agree to table it to the next meeting, postpone it, raise your hand. And that passes unanimously.
I would just, one suggestion is before next meeting, I think the council needs to read the ordinance from Lowry Crossing, which was in 2000. It covers a lot of the issues we're talking about, including if they tear up the roads, the truck tears up the roads, the trash collectors are responsible for repair. I think, it's pretty easy to read, and there's a lot of key points that I think would be important for all of us to have a copy of that before we discuss it.
Okay, yes, I can send that to you.
Sure. Tara said she would provide us a copy.
Okay, number 10, I'm sorry.
Do you mind, can we ask Crandall what their ordinance is too, since Blackjack kind of name dropped them, that they have the exclusivity contract with Blackjack? Can we ask them what their ordinance is, or how do we go about getting their ordinance? It's something else to compare besides
Lowry Crossing?
Yeah.
That's a good idea. So what town did he say?
Crandall.
Crandall?
It's
Okay.
not in the, I
And
guess the ordinance is passed.
Actually, I think that, if you want to investigate that, so I'm one person, so if the council wants to, if you want to investigate that one, I can get the Lowry Crossing. And then also, we've heard that the city of Talty was negotiating 2 or 3 vendors, just last week. So that would be something that, is one of you want to investigate that? Okay. Crandall, and then who wants to call Talty?
Tara, and my suggestion about the council reading the Lowry Crossing ordinance, my suggestion is read the one that was signed, not the one that was the first draft, because it was quite a bit different than the one that was signed, as the ordinance 121.
Okay, 121. Okay, got it. Okay.
And it was signed in 2000.
In 2000. Okay. So we'll get more information. Okay, so moving along to number 10, discuss and consider action to select an attorney and authorize an execution of engagement agreement with Messer Fort McDonald Law Firm. We have a citizen, actually 2 citizens who would like to speak to that. So Chad West, you're number 1.
I guess the one concern that I have and challenge that I would put before the council is that we had a complete meeting where we spent a workshop to review 8 trash vendors. However, we're looking at 1 attorney. It has nothing to do with the qualifications, and I understand that we have to have 1 attorney. God knows 2 attorneys is too many. But I also think we also need to look at the overall attorney-client privilege. I know that this has kind of been a long time coming. There's been attorneys involved with individual members of the government body, and as we move forward, the council itself has to have that attorney-client privilege, and that if there was privilege established with individual members of the council prior to us becoming a town, that there could be a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Chad. So the attorney that just clarify what he just said, what I think he just said is the attorney that we had for the incorporation is not this firm. It's we have the Shepherd Law Firm for that incorporation effort. So this law firm was one that was recommended by the town of Doubletree, the city of Doubletree, that incorporated in 2018. And then also I kept seeing Messer on a lot of little towns So they have like 8 or 10 attorneys affiliated with their law firm. And then Patty Akers, who has been the lawyer for Doubletree, had recommended Patricia Adams, and she showed up on the February meeting, unpaid, out of the goodness of her heart. And then she's probably given us, I don't know how many hours pro bono, at least 10, it could be more, she could tell you that. But she's been very willing to help us because she knows that we're just in our infancy. And the municipal attorneys who choose to be municipal attorneys are probably the least paid of the attorney dichotomy. I think their rate was $180 an hour. The attorney for the incorporation, for instance, was like $350 an hour. So to give you a point of reference, and they go anywhere from $150 to $500 an hour. And so I thought it was very reasonable. I had 2 other attorneys that I looked into that were highly recommended. And I won't mention their names because one of them failed to disclose that he was working with Hunt County, and that's a conflict that was not stated. And so once I found that, I'm like, scratch. So we have to have an attorney that does not have a former relationship with the entities that we have to develop interlocal agreements with. That's a given, Kaufman, Hunt counties. So Patricia Adams did disclose that she has worked for the city of Kaufman, but that is not, in my estimation, a conflict of interest at all. So they're far enough away, and it's not terrible, right? So, any other discussion on
Yeah, I
that?
got one more. Just so it's open and recorded, do you know of anybody on this panel that has worked with your firm? To your knowledge. Has anybody on this council worked with her firm? Okay, it's recorded. So, and I do want to thank you again for all the pro bono work.
And I have a question on that. Eventually, your law firm's got to be paid. So are you booking these charges to be paid later? No? Just to be clear.
Y'all may think I'm crazy, but okay, so I've been practicing law since 1992 when I graduated from Texas Tech. And before that, I worked for a city to make money to go to school. So I have just always been in municipal government. And then I went to work for a city of Garland, right out of law school. And I've always worked for cities. So we're kind of a different kind of person. Like when I heard from Patty that there was a new city that was forming, I was like, that is really cool. And so it's been an interesting exercise for me. I have an associate that's a brand new lawyer. Well, she's not so brand new anymore, she's almost 2 years now, but who works for me. Her name's Emily Boland, and she has been kind of on this with me, and it's kind of had me kind of have to go back to some of the basics that I haven't had to deal with in a number of years. So we're doing this, and it's actually Double Horn is the city. And so what we're doing, we're the same thing over there. The same thing over there is that we've helped them. They don't have any money. They were fighting off a challenge to their incorporation. So I think we've gotten through that, and now what we're doing, because we do consider ourselves public servants, and our rates are not high like the other private sector because cities don't have that kind of budget as taxpayer funds. So what we're doing is, I think me and a couple other attorneys might have been kind of kibitzing on the whole thing. I think I just might have been the only one who hung in. So what I talked to my partners, and I'm a partner in the firm, and I talked to my partners, and what we talked about doing was just continuing to work pro bono, helping y'all get through this first hitch of getting your budget in place, getting the taxes in place. And at that point, we would like to be paid if you still want us to be your city attorney. But for us, we do a lot of pro bono things. We work with Samaritan Inn and some other places. So we feel like it's part of our duty to kind of give back. So I don't want to stand up here and sound like I'm a martyr, but I'm kind of a law nerd, and I'm kind of a municipal law nerd. So I
worked in this, for a number of years, so that's kind of where we're coming from. But I'm not booking time and go, here's your huge bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Since you're working pro bono, does that still establish a fiduciary relationship?
That's one of the reasons. I mean, you have to have someone designated as your legal counsel, and by designating someone, whether it's me or someone else, then you're gonna establish that attorney-client relationship.
Yeah, and as Terry said, we really appreciate what you're doing and why you're doing it, and want to thank you for it. And I guess when we get to executing a contract, eventually you're going to want a contract. And in the contract, that's when we have to discuss the fees and expenses. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next person to speak, citizen who signed up to speak on this item is Lon Aiken. Lon Aiken.
Well, I'm gonna try to do a little bit better this time. A while ago, I kind of wanted to throw this mic at somebody, I guess, head behind my head. I ain't no speaker, but one thing I wanted to bring out about these franchise fees, there's nothing in this world that's free.
I think on number 10, we're talking about the town attorney. So, Lon, you've signed up for number 11 as well. So, that will be the next agenda item. But I have you on as for speaking number 10, which is about the town attorney.
Oh, no, I didn't circle that, and if I did, I didn't miss it.
Okay, so then you're gonna be up next, but not this one. Okay.
Give us a minute.
Give us a minute. Yep.
Hold that thought.
Okay, so we're still discussing and considering action to select a town attorney and authorize an execution of engagement agreement so that we can do some of these things that are required. So the agreement with Messer Fort McDonald Law Firm, and I think some of you have talked with Patricia Adams. And so do we have a motion?
I would echo what other members have said, that I do appreciate very much the time that you're putting in and taking us on as a challenge, because I think we will be. The part of this that I struggle with, two things. One, I don't know that I have all the information I need to make the decision, rates and other things. I'm taking it on faith that your numbers are what they are. But also, I don't want us to take advantage of your generosity and then get around to looking at all of the other credentials that we might need to make a decision and then saying, well, thanks, and that's it. You've been left high and dry. So I feel like if we make a commitment here tonight to you, then we need to be willing to stick with that commitment to the point that you start making some money. We can't let you go and then hire somebody else and pay them. So I don't think that if I were to vote favorably for this tonight, that I could go back to the citizens that I interact with and convince them that I had made an educated choice, because I'm not educated. I have some resumes and they're impressive, but I don't have anybody else's resume from any other law firm. I mean, this is, somebody brought me a Chevy and I have no idea what the Ford, the Dodge, and the others look like. So I just, personally, I'm uncomfortable with making the decision.
So one of the reasons that you're given the packet is that you can know what's on the agenda and then investigate on your own. So, I mean, isn't that right? So you're welcome to do that. And I mean, I have a 10-page resume here from the firm, but if you have these other questions, I think I did send out an email saying, please, look at other firms, look at that. And this one, I will say that Patricia since February has been answering questions, and I think that what she said is correct, that you said to me that it eventually, when we're able to pay something, then you would have really nice terms where, if we can't pay something, then it'd be 6 months down the road, but it would be like a net 6 months or something.
Well, and just to clarify, Tara, I'm not picking on you. I'm not saying you've done anything wrong. But neither do I think it's a good idea for 5 council members to start randomly calling around town to municipal law firms and asking questions. I just feel like one of us should gather that information and then we can review it, because I don't want us all out shopping for something for the city.
Okay.
I'll just say, myself, having worked with hundreds of lawyers, that I'm very impressed. I consider this kind of an interview process for you, and I've been impressed with your answers and the way you've handled it. And I myself am comfortable going ahead with the motion to have an agreement with your law firm. And thank you for coming and doing what you're doing. And also, I'm impressed the way you answered the questions and handled it. Not that we all know whether you're right or wrong, but you sound right and sound knowledgeable. Thank you.
Well, this isn't a marriage either, right? I mean, we can always change and switch horses if we want, so to speak. So, just making sure we're not, by looking at this particular agenda item, I don't say that we're limiting our future in any way.
So maybe you don't know you're entering an engagement with a law firm. You don't think they're going to want a contract, an exclusive contract? So I'm with Mike on this deal. She's very impressive. But let us do some due diligence and get a couple. I think we owe the city the due diligence to look into another law firm to ask these same questions. Patricia's answered everything we wanted, and I don't know that anybody can answer them better, but we owe it to the citizens to look somewhere else besides one spot. I got this agenda, I don't know, Sarah, correct me, you might have emailed them out Friday maybe, but I picked this packet up yesterday due to a busy schedule. That's 10 or 15 pages, yeah, it's an impressive resume, but let's not rush into this. They might come out the clear victor. Without a doubt, they're super sharp, but let's look at it a little bit further, maybe one more meeting before we rush into this.
I would agree with that, and I'd also agree with what Brian's saying, mostly that there's no contract right now, we're not being asked to sign anything. So no risk, I would say, or very, very little if you consider it. And it does have sizable advantages, having somebody to consult and getting this out of the way. Again, we can look at it later, so with advantages and no risks, I mean, I'm looking to approve this.
Well, I'll just add one more point. I think this is a very important thing to get done quickly. I don't think it should drag out. And if we're going to make a decision the next meeting, it should be a decision. And we should have the priority to get things done. If we're going to talk to another law firm, do it, but make a decision soon, because this is a critical feature that we need.
I guess
And by the way, I'm satisfied with going ahead with this law firm, but I understand the arguments from the rest of the council.
And just one more point of clarity, we're talking about the execution of an engagement agreement. In non-lawyer terms, would that be a contract?
When we provide services under the ethical rules, we are to provide you with a copy of the lawyer's rules and the creed and have an engagement letter, or we have to send you a letter and say we're not going to represent you. So it's a step that has to take place. I've been working pro bono, and I can certainly continue working pro bono. I don't want you to feel like, I've been working this just so someday I could make a big buck, because that really wasn't the intent, but in talking to my partners about this, what we're going to do, and it's just stuff that we like. So I'm happy if y'all want to take time and look at others. I have enough confidence in myself and my firm that we're the best around. So I'm not worried about that. And I will continue to, help you as much as I can help you pro bono until y'all, can get on your feet with everything. So that's just where I am. It's a professional service. And so any one of us can end it at any time because it's a professional service. So we have to get along and like working together and work well together.
Question,
Are we able to do some of these things that we have to do without an engagement agreement?
what I've been doing, Mayor, is giving you advice, and it is privilege between me. The client is the council. It's not the mayor or one member of the council. As a governmental lawyer, my client is the city and the city council. So I would need something, if that's what we're gonna do eventually. I need that to cover me and to cover y'all with privilege. So we do need to have some level of formality there.
So is the question, Tara, can you get the next month's business done under the current arrangement?
Not if we have subcommittees that need interlocal agreements, we're dead in the water. Now, I will say also, I talked with two attorneys. One was a TML attorney, he can't be named, but he worked with this law firm. He said, you are in definitely good hands. He said, no, hands down, you're in good hands. I also heard that from one other TML attorney that they're not really supposed to recommend, but I did check with two other firms. The problem that I see in this area is we have a lot of incestuous relationships with attorneys, and when you start digging, they have all represented local entities, and it becomes very difficult to find one that will actually take us on that hasn't had relationship with the entities that we need to make agreements with. And so I'm just impressed. I'm really impressed that they've stuck with us free of charge. I mean, who does that? Who does that? You have to have a good heart for that, right? And not only do they have a good heart, but they're very competent. Oh my goodness, they have one. Patty Akers is fighting the Attorney General of Texas in Double Horn. I misspoke there. It's Double Horn, Texas, and they're taking it on for this itty bitty town of 250 people. So I just feel I've heard so many good references from attorneys and in cities that have used them that I just have full confidence in them. And having dealt with the attorney on the incorporation who was less than that, and other attorneys who were less than what I'm currently seeing, I'm full endorsement. It just is.
Okay, so having heard all of that, I make a motion that we table this till next month to give us a little bit more reading and review time. I appreciate the offer to hang with us, and I think you very well may come out the clear winner. I personally am not comfortable going back to citizens and saying, no, I've done all my homework and this is it. I appreciate the recommendation, the referral, and all the good words, but I just haven't done enough.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so all those who want to table it to the next meeting, you're realizing that this puts us dead in the water on any actions because we don't have an attorney representing us in an engagement. So put your hand up if you're in favor of that, if you oppose. Okay, well, let's try that again. Okay, so if you're in favor of tabling it to the next meeting, postponing this item to the next meeting, raise your right hand. Okay, so that's 3, and that passes. So 3-2, that passes that we table it till next meeting. Okay. All right, number 11, discuss and consider an ordinance for receiving a franchise fee from Encore Electric. All right, so we have Lon Aiken who wants to speak to that item, citizen who wants to speak to that, and then we also have Cindy Tahan who is from Encore here as a guest to answer questions.
Sorry about getting out of order. I can't hear very good, so I kind of have to pay attention to hand signals. Anyway, on this franchise deal, what I understand about franchises is the company is going to pay you so much over and above what they're charging for their fees, for their pickup fees. So who you think's going to wind up paying that? It's going to be the citizens will wind up paying that. And if they run their business like most businesses do, whatever you charge, they're gonna add a little bit to it for paperwork. So to me, it's a bad deal. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, Tara, do you know, are these entities paying franchise fees to the county currently, and this is just money that'll be redirected to us, or have they never paid any fees?
So Cindy Tatum is here. Would you like to speak to that? Because you are all things Encore, right? On this. Cindy Tatum is the one that has been so proactive in trying to get us some funds.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Tam with Encore. Thank you for your time this evening, Mayor and council members. We do not pay a franchise fee to the county. We only pay to the cities, and that's by state law.
Do your rates increase for the customers if you pay us a franchise fee?
The franchise fee is part of doing business, and it is allowable in our rates as per the Public Utility Commission.
Is that franchise fee, is that on your base rate, or is that on your D schedule?
It's per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
It's a fee per kilowatt hour.
So are you currently charging the citizens of Poetry this franchise rate that will now come to us as the town of Poetry, or is it not being charged at this point?
It is not being charged at this point.
Any guesstimate on what it would cost kilowatt hour? What's the average kilowatt hour? Like that?
Let me get the ordinance here. There's a factor per kilowatt hour. It is 0.003589 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's, again, that's 0.003589 cents.
What's the average
What's the average kilowatt home consumption?
Company-wide, we look at a residential home as having an average of about 1,300 kilowatt hours a month. But that's an average company-wide.
I don't want to do math that's wrong in front of everybody, so we'll use the calculator. So we're talking about $5 a month. Does that sound about right? Per
I
customer?
haven't done the math, but
It's
I trust you.
$5.05. So, I mean, I don't think that's undue hardship, but I just want to be clear that
Sure.
kind of what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess when I first heard this, I was under the impression that it was the utility's responsibility to pay a fee for coming through our town, but now I'm hearing the definition of a tax, right? Because now the customers who use you are going to have a line item on their bill for franchise fee, $5 a month, whatever it is, and you're going to remit that to the city. So everybody's bill goes up by whatever franchise fee we agreed to.
It is recoverable through our rates.
Okay, so it's a tax. In my words, it's a tax.
Anybody else? So as much as I like donating to the town, I cannot continue $500 a month on average. I'm just saying we have to have some funds in some way. And so it is the jurisdiction of the town to have some sort of income through, call it what you will. This is a franchisee. So right now, we don't even have enough money to open a checking account. We have zero. Okay? There is utilities, there's insurance, there's all kinds of expenses that cost money. We're gonna put an ad in the paper for a bank even. It all takes a little bit of money. So we need to have some sort of income. If we, for instance, if we didn't have franchise fees, then we would have to potentially look at more property tax, okay? Or sales and use tax. So it has to come from somewhere. So, I mean, do we want, and we have to fund our town somehow. Okay, so, and I will say this, on the agreement that we have from Encore, Cindy Tatum was able to negotiate a back pay. So they could write us within a month, if we approve this and we get our bank account on it, a $10,875 check for taxes from November end through May end. That is very generous, so that we would have some startup money for our town. And they did not necessarily have to do that. Again, it's like back pay, and it was very, very generous.
That's starting with your date of incorporation.
And this is the date of incorporation, so that is just very generous. Now, FEC, they're smaller, they can't necessarily do that, but Encore is doing that because they recognize we're a startup town, and that's just really decent. So take that into consideration, I think.
Are your franchise fees negotiable, or is that a set rate by y'all? If y'all are gonna pay franchise fees, you charge this dollar.
Okay.
What I'm getting at is we have 700 houses. Do the quick math. Everybody averages the same. We're looking at a $42,000 income. I don't know all the needs of the city. No one up here does. But it's $60 a house. If we cut that in half, is that easier than apple to buy right now? If it's even a negotiable item with Encore.
The way we calculate the franchise fee was dictated in Senate Bill 7 and Public Utility Regulatory Act. Prior to deregulation, the Texas legislature voted in to restructure the electric industry in 1999. And before that time, all cities were their franchise fees were based on a 4% of gross receipts. Well, with deregulation, the electric companies were not the ones that you were paying anymore. You're paying your retail electric providers, and this was going to be very hard to collect and to track. So they came up with a way to still make the cities whole with their franchise fee. And so what they did is they looked at the previous year, which was 1998, and they looked at the total amount paid that city that year, knowing that it had been based on a 4% franchise fee. Take that amount and divide it by the kilowatt hours that were sold in the city, and that created a factor going forward that would be charged for every kilowatt hour sold in the city. It differs somewhat from city to city based on what kind of accounts made up that city. If a city has a lot of residential, it was one cost. If they had a lot of really large industrial that had a primary service rate that was cheaper, then that lowered that factor some. And so that's how that came about. New cities don't have that history. And so according to the Public Utility Regulatory Act, when a new city comes in, they have the option of picking the factor of a city in their county. And we looked at Hunt County and we looked at Kaufman County, and this we felt would probably be your suggestion because it is really the highest of all, to the most benefit of the city.
What city did you use in the county?
I can't, that is considered confidential information. I can give you a list of all of the factors of the two counties, but going forward, if someone asked us what is the factor you're paying poetry, we wouldn't tell them either. It's confidential with our cities as to what we pay each city.
Just real quick on that, when I was doing research, this number came in at about a third higher than the other cities that I saw in Kaufman and in Hunt, particularly in Hunt. So it came in a bit higher. Now, I used to run a phone company, so I'm kind of familiar with tariff rates. I was able to reclaim the franchises as well, but I wasn't able to reclaim it retroactively. So the 10K that we're talking about here is if we signed up and said yes, is that something Encore is going to then go back and retroactively bill for?
I would honestly have to ask that question myself. I'm not sure.
So, have you seen the ordinance that we're looking at here? I guess you,
Yes,
you
sir.
wrote this contract?
I didn't write it, but I have seen it, yes.
So when I first read it, I thought it was to give you the rights to come through our city, through right-of-ways and have your poles and substations, whatever.
It is.
Okay, and then we have this other piece of it that's the franchise fee that we can, I guess, authorize you to start collecting from our citizens. Does this mean that you, and I'm being ridiculous here, but does this mean that right now you're not authorized to go through our city with all of your stuff, your power lines and transformers and things?
Technically, I would say no. It's somewhat grandfathered. We've been here for a long time.
Well, I'm not throwing you out. I'm just kind of curious because it just looks like it's like, okay, I'm just telling them, you know, it's sort of like when I give somebody an easement, I'm giving them the right to open gates and come through and get to whatever their facilities are. I mean, you've clearly already set up shop in our town and been here a long time, but I think the more pertinent part of the discussion for me is this franchise fee, this tax. So the 10K or so is, again, it would be interesting to know, are you going to back bill all of the residents and call it like a recovery fee or something like I see on other bills? Or, you know, I mean, you like the law firm, you got to get paid at some point, so.
I can step out and make a phone call and find out.
I would appreciate that if possible.
I would really like to know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other
Well, we
question on
have-
the fees. Can you select another city to compare us to that might have a lower rate?
You can select any of the rates, any of
We
the
can.
factors, you can select any of the factors on this list of cities in Hunt and Kaufman County.
Okay. So we can, if this is a third hire, we can go with the lowest one.
You can make that decision.
We can choose our tax rate based on the cities that's in the counties we serve.
You can choose the factor based on those, any of
And
those
does that
cities.
still would come with the new car sticker, the 10K that we would?
No, it does, you would still get a one-time payment, but that one-time payment was based on that factor.
Right.
So if you lower that factor, that one-time payment is going to go down as well.
Okay, okay, so is there a motion to take a little recess so she can step out?
I'll make a motion.
What was that? If I can reach the person, not no more than a couple of minutes.
Okay, so I have a motion to recess. Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor of recess? Okay. Recess 2 minutes.
Okay, the explanation I was given is that this is a cost of doing business, but it would not be charged directly back to the poetry customers in that we have system-wide rates. And so the Public Utility Commission told us years ago that they want us to have system-wide rates. So in our next rate case, it would be rolled into that rate case. But we've got 3.7 million customers, you know, and so if that is allowed in that rate case, you would see very, very little in your customers.
Okay, thank you for calling on that. And that was the question, is it retroactive? And it sounds like it's not, is that what you're saying? It's not retroactive.
You would not see an individual charge on your bill, no.
So I'd be interested in hearing from our free attorney. I mean, is this sort of standard city business to do things like this? You know, not the specifics of it, but is this extraordinary or is this ordinary to do these kinds of things?
No, these are the way that the city can fund road improvements, and which includes right-of-way, and they're in your right-of-way, they're using your road. So while they may not charge that to counties, I mean, it's standard for a city to enter into franchise agreements because that gives y'all funding from the people who use those roads, as opposed to your taxpayers having to, in their tax rate, pay for, you know, roads. It's the users and their trucks that are coming in, so it's pretty standard.
Now, some fees, mostly, some fees that municipalities charge are limited in their use. would these funds that we collect be limited in use?
Now, franchise fees are typically earmarked towards the streets and right-of-ways. I don't know a city that uses them for anything else. I mean, it goes into general fund. It's not restricted by state law, but it goes into the general fund, and it usually goes toward road and right-of-way improvements.
Is there any legal requirement on that? Is that what you were just saying? There's no. So
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I know that typically what cities use franchise fees for is just infrastructure. So when you talk about road infrastructure, it's drainage, it's curbs and sidewalks, anything from back to back of the right of way that goes across, the area you drive on. So that's generally what those fees are used for. I'm not aware of anybody restricting them because I don't know that anybody uses them for anything else. So.
Okay, so a startup town though, which has nothing, and this potentially is the first check to even open a bank account, there's no problem with us using it to say pay the light bill. That you know of.
That I know of, off the top of my head, standing right here, no.
Okay, all right, clear.
So I think you answered this earlier, but just to go back to it now that we know the other groundwork here. So is 100% of the fee going to be remitted back to the town of Poetry, or are you going to keep a piece of it?
Oh, no, we keep no piece of it. It's a pass-through.
Okay, so I could go back to the citizens with a straight face and say your electric bill with Encore will go up a few dollars a month, but those few dollars go straight to the town of Poetry.
That's correct.
Any other discussion?
The answer is no, but do you know what FEC's fees are?
I do not.
Okay.
I did talk with the FEC representative today. She was working on redlining a potential agreement. It was 14 pages long. I got it like at 5 o'clock, so I did not have enough time to even digest that. We will try and put that on the next meeting agenda. They were going to also try to do a 4% so that it would be equal, because if you live in Kaufman County versus Hunt County, you might have different services, and I think they were going to try and match Encore.
So shortly after we pass this, if we were to pass it, you would then write us a check for the 10,000, whatever.
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
then we would start paying you quarterly after that.
Okay.
And that's your option. There are some cities that get paid annually, but most cities don't want to wait 12 months in between payments. And particularly for a startup city, I can see where it would be beneficial for you to get your money a little more quickly than that. And so then we would pay you on a quarterly basis after
Yeah,
that.
we got a website we got to pay for, so and we got to print our seal. We got to get going.
It might be nice to have a few more microphones, actually. But, so, no, again, Cindy has been amazing. I think she called me back in January. Was it January, after she heard that we had incorporated, and has really been on the ball, working like crazy on our behalf. And her assistant or coworker is here as well. And he can vouch for that. And I mean, I'm on my house is on the FEC. I've had to go and it's been pulling teeth to try and get things going with that. And they're smaller, I get it, but so I just appreciate the proactive nature of that. And I think it's, from what I can tell, it's meant to be a help to a fledgling little town. So it's nice when you see some of that. They're not all out to get us. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, do we have a motion? We have this ordinance here. I think it has a schedule, payments due, it has a check amount for the past 6 months. And that could be, I think we talked about having an EIN number that's on its way. I've petitioned the IRS, submitted that paperwork for an EIN number for our town. depending on when I can get that and get the W-9 filled out, then they can issue the check to us as a town. So, that amount was I thought I had it memorized, I think it's $10,875.76. Because for the check that could be submitted within a month of that paperwork. And then the payment due date, they have it is September 30th, December 31st, March 31st, and June 30th. So pending, I guess, our attorney looking at that, or if we have an attorney. So looking at that, then we can authorize this. Do we have a motion is there a motion on the floor on how we want to handle this?
All right, you're asking for a motion to number 11. I make the motion we accept number and pass number 11 regarding the Encore fee.
Second.
So I'm assuming that motion is this ordinance, right?
Can we put in there pending attorney?
Well, we can, so our free attorney hasn't looked at it yet.
We want to amend the motion.
I really haven't had the opportunity. I think I just got it yesterday or the day before, something like that. Anyway, so I haven't really read through. It's not one of those easy reads. So I skimmed through it, but I had a couple of questions. So I think they're probably easily resolved.
Yeah, I guess I would say, as Mike just suggested, pending approval by legal consultants. I'm not sure what you're called.
You might want to just say, approve the ordinance, approving the franchise, and the actual agreement will be subject to legal review. We'll work on it.
There you go, subject to legal review. Thank you.
All right, Tom, did you want to go ahead and make that?
Yes, I see, make the motion, we accept number 11 with adding on after Encore Electric, comma, subject to legal review.
Any second? Okay. So all those in favor of that, raise your right hand. And I don't get a vote. Okay, those opposed? All right, so it passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay, so number 12, I don't have a guess. Okay, number 12 is discuss and consider an ordinance for receiving franchise fee from FEC Electric. As I mentioned, we were kind of hoping they would have it ready, and they had it ready like kind of late. And it was 14 pages. So do we have a motion to postpone this until the next meeting, so that all of us can review that, because it's 14 pages.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Could we actually pass the item that we consider the ordinance, again, subject to legal review once received?
Yeah.
And if the legal review, okay, subject to review. Okay, subject to review then. I'm trying to make sure that where we can, we move forward where it makes sense. This looked like an item that we might have broad consensus on, but if not, then we can.
Yeah, Brian, I understand. I just would prefer to see it.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, I've looked at like 50 of these contracts this week, so I kind of know what it's going to say. So, but yeah, I certainly get where you're coming from.
So do we have a motion?
We need a motion.
Okay, so I make a motion and we table the franchise fee discussion with FEC until we receive information back from them and have had
Okay.
time to review it. Council.
Okay, for the next meeting.
Yes.
Postpone to the next meeting, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, and it passes 5-0. Okay, number 13, discuss and consider the quote from the TML Risk Insurance for the town council and volunteers. We do have a sheet on that, it's a bid proposal summary. In addition, it was 60-something pages, so I have if any of you have questions on the details, this is from the Texas Municipal League. It's their intergovernmental risk pool insurance. So they are town friendly, but if you have questions, I have this packet here too. And the quote here, the bid summary, it shows that it's $500,000 general liability, $5,000 law enforcement liability, $1 million aggregate, $500,000 for errors and omissions liability, $1 million for aggregate public officials, $500,000 auto liability, $25,000 for auto medical payments, and that we don't have, of course, a town auto, but if you were traveling to such meeting and something happens, then they can help with that. Auto physical damage, there isn't anything. The total annual payment for that is $1,057. The quarterly payment is $264.25. Any discussion on that?
So I guess, Tara, when I read this, the part I was interested in personally was the errors and omissions part, so that if we make a bad decision, we're protected. I guess I'm not clear on the law enforcement liability, for example. If we do this agreement with the counties, do they carry their own liability? I mean, do we need to pay for that protection? I'm just wondering if all of these things are necessary.
This is kind of the bottom line. I mean, this is your this is the least amount that we can get.
Okay.
I think you have to have something on there about law enforcement, is my understanding, for talking with the inter-risk pool. This is kind of your bottom tier of insurance.
So I have the same question. The person that I asked about this said that even though we don't have our own police department, if we enter into an interlocal agreement with an outside agency, that we can still find ourselves liable. So it's not something that you would want to refuse.
I guess the one question I have, the city would pay this, or do we individually pay this?
Well, currently, we're covered with the understanding that we will be, I think right now I'm being drafted, but, so they had to have something, but the quarterly payment's $264.25, so the city, the town would be paying that once we have money to do so, I suppose.
So this would cover the 6 of us plus a secretary, if we,
Plus a secretary, plus any volunteers.
but it's still the same amount.
It's still the same amount. Now, it does go up if, I think, they base it on how much revenue the town has. So if the revenue of the town goes up, then it might go up as well, because the liability would go up. So, but we haven't done a budget yet, so we have no idea what that will be. So there's a potential that it would go up if our revenue goes up as well.
I guess I'm fine with it myself, just like it is.
We are members of the Texas Municipal League. This is their risk pool to try and help towns. Of course, as you may have heard, our first year membership with them is free. So I've spent dozens of hours on the phone with their legal department, just for basic general information. They've been very helpful. They have a great reputation. In fact, every attorney I've talked with, which is in the last year, gosh, a dozen or more, they have said the TML is a great resource. So, and I found that to be the case. And I know some of you have also utilized them. So this is the risk pool that they have. It is a little separate, but it is meant to help towns.
I'll move to approve the proposal from TML.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to consider the quote received from TML Risk Insurance for the town council and its volunteers. All of those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, and it passes. Okay, number 14. Discuss and consider the 50-year commercial lease agreement with the Campground Church as written. Okay, so we have a commercial lease agreement that was vetted significantly by Patricia Adam, our pro bono attorney. And so some back history for some of you that might not know that in 2017, my husband and I would pass by the Campground Church and see that it was dilapidating. And we're like, oh my goodness, this is a significant church. At the time, we were renovating for the, we started renovating for the feed store, and we just couldn't take anything else on. But it was kind of I'd met with Mr. Killian and said, oh my goodness, it's so amazing. But it needs some help. But then in 2019, when we realized that for incorporation, we have to have a set town hall. It has to be survey platted. Here's a survey plat for that. And it has to be in the incorporation process. You cannot incorporate without that. Then that was the number, that was the first thing we paid for. So donations went to pay the $500 survey plat for that. And so that had to be done. And so I went before the board. The Campground Cemetery is a nonprofit board. It's Campground Community Cemetery, Inc., nonprofit 501c3. I went before the board. There were the Little Johns, husband and wife team, Mitzi Daniel, Wesley Killian, and there was one absent. And so that board voted. I stepped out of the room. They voted. They decided that yes, we're agreeable to this. They were actually excited about the possibilities of us renovating and restoring somewhat this church that has been fallen in disrepair. And so we signed an initial agreement, and then we thought, at that time, we thought the incorporation wouldn't take that long. We thought, 3 months. That was wrong. So everything legal takes 3 times as long, so it ended up being like 9 months later. And so then when we realized that it had passed, the incorporation passed, that we would need something to roll over into the town. So then I asked Patricia to help with that because we wanted to get the best deal possible for the town. And we have put a lot of labor and love into renovating. We've had lots of 30 different people donate time and money into the renovations. And it was, again, Wesley had told me that it was set for almost, he was thinking it would be demolished. So why not save a church that has been falling, and it's been vacant for 6 years. So when I went with the committee, they felt like, they were all in favor of that, and so now we have this 50-year lease. I paid the $25 initial fee, and it's a 50-year lease for free. For free. So I don't know how we're going to get better than free. And remember that the cemetery, Campground Church, from what Wesley told me, he's been managing it for decades, but before that, it was kind of meant to be for the town. It was a gift to the town. It wasn't for any one person. So what better use, in my mind, than for the town hall? and a community center if we're able to renovate the big sanctuary. Now, one thing that Wesley did ask, and you know, he asked, is there any way you can include sanctuary in the name somewhere with the big worship sanctuary? And I'm like, I guess. So that was his one request. And have campground sanctuary, like maybe have a campground sanctuary hall if we're able to renovate the big worship center. You understand there's an annex, and that's what we've been working on because that's what we can afford to do. It's like 900 square feet, and then right next to that, adjacent to that, is the former worship sanctuary, and he asked that we call that put campground somewhere in the name. So I didn't think that was a too difficult request, but is there any? Oh yeah. Okay. So. Oh, we do have. Thank you. Keeping me on track. We do have 2 citizens who would like to comment on this particular topic. So Chad West.
Yeah, I guess my only comment is while I understand that the rent is free, the cost of the restoration will be not. And that will fall on the city of, the town of Poetry. And I'm not sure a new town is well equipped to be able to take on those charges at this time. That's it.
Thank you for that comment. So I would agree if we were going for the sanctuary portion. I think we've had bids of just fixing the foundation of $40,000. So the sanctuary portion is huge, and it would be upwards of $150,000 or more to renovate that. All we need though is really the annex portion. We just need offices to keep the municipal records secure. So the 900 square feet that we currently are renovating and almost like a 70% complete. And on that, since we're on that, we had a huge, Brett Patterson has a paint company, and he's donated all the texture and paint free of charge. That's huge. So the 5,100 now, 50, let's see, we've got another 150. So, we've got 5,250 now that can be put toward other things. It might be that it's for the lighting. So we need lighting, we need air conditioning. I think we can just use a couple wall units. Maybe there's hybrid units now that are pretty economical. So the dollars are stretching further, which is awesome. So we have $5,250 right now of donated funds, and so donated labor. There's been nothing that has come from this municipality except for donations. So from the people of the community and their labor. And so it's kind of an organic, beautiful thing, I think. It's been fun to see the community come out. And by the way, we have one this Saturday. So to see a work day. So to that point, the annex is not costing, and it probably won't cost the town anything because we're doing it with donated labor, and we've had council members donate lots of time to that, and as well as citizens. Okay, next, Lon Aiken. You want to talk to this?
Yes, I'm just Charlie at the center, but I fear that everything will go great right now with this church and town sort of working together down there. But 20 years down the road, there'll be a big fallout. There'll be a big wreck. The cemetery people, they'll fall out with the city, and won't be anything but dissension. Anytime you mix a church and a cemetery with a city, you got problems. So that's about all I got to say on it. I've been talking against this since everything. They started it, they started mentioning it to me, and I'm still against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. To that, do you have any case in point on that? Is there a record on history that shows that? Of a church and city working together? I don't know of any. So actually it's been a beautiful thing to see people in the community come out and work together. We've had a lot of fun. We've had Boomer the dog show up, and it's been fun to meet people in the community. So people, when I did the survey of what the town really wants and what they think a small town is, one of that is a sense of community. So when you have community events such as that, we had that when we were building the school. So it was kind of this organic, rich network, and it was really a sense of community. And so if we want to build that sense of community, what better way than to work on a common goal? And it's been really amazing. So we've not had any problems so far, thank God. Any comment?
So Tara, two things. One, I guess I'm with Lon a little bit. I think there's a potential monster down the road, but that's just a feeling. When we incorporated, I guess I imagined that we would do something like Union Valley did, where we just get a little shed, drag it onto a piece of property, get a lease, and operate out of that. I understand that to incorporate we had to designate, but I'm still not clear that that means we have to stick with that town hall for the rest of the city's life. But to the contract itself, so I've talked to some of the people that I know, and my understanding is that the cemetery board did not approve this contract, but you're telling me they did, so I'm
Yes, they voted, the Little Johns, husband and wife, and Mitzi Daniel and Wesley Clillian. There was one absent who was not there, and they voted on it. I was asked to leave the room, and they voted on it, and it was approved. So, so I don't understand what you've got a building that's in dilapidation and in disrepair. We passed by it for 6 years. Nobody's doing anything with it, and the minute we want to do something with it, I don't understand it. I don't understand the issue, I guess.
Okay. I like the annex building. I've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that annex building, and I like the idea of starting us up there. However, I've read through the lease, and I have 3 pages of questions, which I've sent to you, about the lease. And I'm not sure it would be a great use of our time to go through each point in this meeting. So there was a recommendation that we move to enter into a lease agreement with the similar pricing, which would be free to the town. But that would clarify and get us to a more standard agreement. And I would really like to see that more standard agreement before we go into this. There's a whole, again, 3 pages.
Did you get what I sent from
I did
the
it,
attorney?
and she suggested that we enter into a lease agreement with the mayor to negotiate a more standard agreement.
Okay.
So I'm following legal advice. So that would, if rather than doing that, if you guys would like to go point by point through 3 pages of questions, I could do it. I just don't think it'd be a great use of our time.
So yeah, I too want to see a different lease agreement. There's verbiage in here that switches the tenant from Tara to the city. Question number 1, if that building wasn't going anywhere and was just falling down, why did we rush to get a contract on April 13th, being elections were going to be had on May the 15th? So the answer is really not that important, but just curious. And number two, that what Mike said has also come up in other conversations. So I want to, I'd like to see the approval by the other ones. I don't want one member of that, whoever's signature that is. I'm guessing that's Wesley's. I don't want one member of that campground cemetery speaking for all the members over there. So yeah, I'd like to see a different contract.
So the landlord, Wesley Killeen is the director, and I understand it's legally binding with the director's signature. So.
But if we have people that are saying that might not happen, I think we should look and see if it happens.
Well, the member who was not present was Rooster Bennett, I believe. He is on that board. The others who were present, I did walk out of the room, and so, but they asked me back in. I said, "You've been approved." And here we go. That's all I know.
So, are we in favor in getting another lease agreement, scratching Tara Sankovich, putting the city of Portree, and revising it that direction, or what do we want to do?
Well, I think it would be prudent to ask the board, so now that we put $14,000 worth of improvements in it, are they wanting to renege on us, or I don't know, I mean.
Well, I think, part of the struggle I have is I think there was a lot of assumptions that were made going into this, and I appreciate restoring something in our community because I drove past the same dilapidated building as you. But what I disagree with is me, being held hostage that now I have the responsibility to make this our town hall. To me, those are separate things. We need a town hall somewhere, but it could be a metal shed on the front of Dale's property or.
So even the metal shed would cost you $20,000.
Yeah, but it would be our metal shed. Nobody could take it away from us. The board couldn't change their mind, get mad at us, and we could drag our little metal shed from property to property. It could be on lawns one week, mine the next.
It actually, I'm not sure that that's legal, but.
Not monthly, but we could move it.
Okay, so this is a potential for a 50-year lease. It doesn't mean that the town has to accept a free lease for 50 years, but I don't know. I sign a lot of contracts in our businesses. I don't know, I pay a lot more than free on my lease that I've had for 11 years now in a building warehouse in Forney, Texas. Okay, so they're thousands of dollars. I don't know that we're gonna maybe have 20,000 by the time this is done into it of donated funds of people that have given out of the goodness of their heart for this cause. So now you want to pull that out from underneath them? I don't think that's just.
But the city council didn't agree to this. This was an assumption, and those people went on good faith. It wasn't something that we had discussed because we didn't even exist.
But by law, for incorporation, you have to have a building.
That's fine. So it was our town hall the day that we incorporated, but again, it doesn't need to remain our town hall. We haven't voted on that.
So, I would encourage you to come this Saturday and check it out because the guys just did the splatter, the orange peel, and it's amazing. It looks amazing. It's not going to just be a podunk little mobile home, okay? It's going to be really quaint. It's got hardwood floors. It's got original windows. It's going to be really quaint. So I would encourage anyone who wants to just come out and look at it. There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that, and it's been an amazing community event, and I think that it could be a beautiful thing for our town.
And once again, I agree with that. I think that it's a wonderful little building, and I will continue to put work into it, whether or not it's our town hall. I anticipate that it will continue being our town hall. However, as far as the document goes, my concern is that right now we have everybody who signed that document is alive and in agreement as to what it means. As far as I know, Mr. Bennett, I understand you're dissenting, but as far as I know, everybody who signed that document is alive and in agreement. In 20 years and 30 years, that may not be the case. And there's enough questions for me as a non-trained non-legal mind to have questions about the document that I want them clarified so that in 30 years or whenever we know that the legacy that we're leaving is the legacy we intended to leave.
So are you asking for another lease agreement? Yeah. So are you asking for another lease agreement? That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, so I think you said enter into a lease agreement with mayor to negotiate a standard agreement, more of a standard agreement. So what is standard? And maybe, what?
Well, first and foremost, it's gonna say the town of Poultry, Texas.
I would love to have my name off of it, honestly.
And I'm not saying that it says it relinquishes power to the city later.
Mhm.
It's just unneeded. And then I agree, man. There's been a lot of donations on there. I don't need to see tenant improvements on here. I mean, this thing could be reduced. It's awesome that everything that's been donated, but I'll thank everybody that comes up there that donated money. But it just needs some. I don't know. It's just too wordy for me. I'm kind of with Brian on this deal. I'd rather pay for something than be given it. It's a lot harder to. Yeah, I see your look over there. I mean, we're talking about a $1 contract, or we're talking about a $25 contract. I would rather pay for it to say that wasn't given to us, and they don't have any expectations that this has been just a give me type deal. I want to pay for it, and if we decide to go that direction, well, then we'll decide how we want to spend our money on it. But I don't want a handout. I want the city to.
So I would also add in that it's a beautiful building. If we get a metal shed, we're not going to be able to have a replacement. This is part of poetry. This is a historical marker. There's really no replacing it. There's no replacing the work that we put into it, or the fact that it dated before incorporation and the volunteers that we've had. Though I'm with Brian that maybe this should be looked over for legal concerns. Perhaps we can form a subcommittee, and of course I would suggest having Brian on that subcommittee to try and look over this and then maybe make a suggestion to the council with a revised version, or maybe they look through it and all the questions are answered and it all looks good at the end.
So. Rent, number 10, Tara. Subject to provisions of this lease, the tenant will pay a base rate of $25 the initial year. And that was decided on by whom? Who was this contract written by?
Wesley and myself.
Okay. So y'all have the agreement the first year to pay $25. And then I'm guessing because it doesn't say every year after, I guess we don't have to assume there's legal verbiage in here, but I guess because it doesn't say and to continue at that rate that we know that it's free?
That was one of Brian's.
That's why I'm saying, you give me the look a while ago, that's why I would say $1 a year that we know that we're paying for, so somebody doesn't come back later and say, well, that was the initial rate, but we have the right to go up at any time.
So you're saying it needs to be tweaked? Huh? You're saying it needs to be tweaked?
Yeah, that's what I've said from the get-go.
Okay.
And I'd like to propose a motion to make a subcommittee of Ms. Tar and Mr. Bryan to reevaluate this lease.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor of a subcommittee of myself and Brian, potentially an attorney, is that what you said? To renegotiate or rewrite this lease, are you saying to bring it back?
Well, Tara, didn't you say that Tricia had already reviewed it?
Yes, but I think that if you modify it, then you also need to have an attorney look over that. Is that not correct?
Okay.
Okay, so if the motion has been made and seconded, is there, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. And it passes.
I've been notified of some more information, and I really misspoke on something earlier, and I'd like to set that straight if I could.
Go back to that agenda item and reopen that agenda item.
Okay, so we would like to go back to agenda item, what is that? No, I've moved on. Here we go. Okay, so we'd like to reopen and discuss and consider the ordinance for franchise fee to Encore Electric. All those in favor, or actually, all those in favor?
I make a motion, we reopen
Okay.
that item for discussion. Need a second?
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, all right, it's open.
So while I was sitting here, I got a text from my contact, and she had talked to someone else too, and she gave me some more information that set it straight. And some of what I told you earlier was incorrect, and I am sorry. I have been doing this for a very long time, but I have never had a brand new city incorporate before. And so part of what I told you is incorrect, and I want to set that straight before I leave tonight, okay? I told you earlier that we have system-wide rates, and we do. So when we go into a rate case, all of that gets rolled in together, and you know, your residential rates here are the same as the people out in Midland. They're no different. So from what she told me is, when this goes into effect, you will not have an increase on your bills at this point. It'll be the same next month and the next. When we go in for a new rate case, we will roll any extra cost into that rate case as a cost of doing business. And if it is granted, then, you know, there'd be some minor, very minor increase at that point, but it wouldn't be the $5 a month, okay, for a franchise fee. So I wanted to set that straight. We pass this, it's not like next month you're gonna get a line item for $5 on your bill for franchise fee.
So it wouldn't be the $5 a month charged to the residents, or it would not be the $5 a month to the city, to the town?
To the residents. I mean, you're gonna get paid. We're gonna pay you based on that factor that's in the agreement.
But the residents will not necessarily feel the full impact of that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I mean, it did pass, but thank you for the clarification. Okay, so we are now on item 15. Do we have to close that agenda item? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so we're on to item 15, discuss and consider establishing the city's fiscal year. So my understanding is that most municipalities, their fiscal year starts October 1st and goes through end of September. The reason being, in my understanding, is that because of the tax structure, you really need to stick with that, because they have deadlines and they try and keep people on those, in the municipalities on those deadlines. And so, do you know of any other town that has anything else?
No, just say, please go with September. October 1 to September 30, please.
She's saying, please go with October 1 to September 30th as the fiscal year, because that is the norm. If you do anything beyond the norm, it just creates more hassle.
Okay, so I make a motion, we establish October 1st through September 30th as the Town of Poetry's fiscal year.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? And it passes. Okay, number 16. Discuss and consider regarding funding for this first year. That's pretty open, but it allows us to talk about it. So we've mentioned some of the franchise fees potentially. We've mentioned we could obtain revenue through trash service potentially. That was postponed, but then beyond that, Potentially, there is a sales and use tax, but that requires a referendum of the people. My understanding, is that correct, Patricia? In the fall, November 3rd election, you would have to have that on the ballot, and of course that costs us money as a town to have something on the ballot. We would have to.
Just for property taxes referendum?
That would be a sales and use tax referendum. So the sales and use tax would have to be on the. We would have to pay for an election just for that item unless we had others, I guess. But sales and use tax, so that would be like, those of us who have businesses in poetry could charge a sales tax on our goods and it would go, the money would go to the town of Poetry. So Poetry Springs Event Center, Poetry Tack and Ag, all the businesses could then charge a sales tax on their goods and merchandise that then would go to the town's coffers.
Is there expense to have that added on to a November election?
We would be in charge, we would have to pay for that election.
Any idea? What, any kind of?
Well, I did,
special elections cost?
when we did the incorporation, Kaufman was trying to charge us $3,250 for the election. So I know that it would be at least that. Well, I know that Hunt County handled this last election. They split the cost between Kaufman and Hunt, and I don't know the cost of that at this. I don't know what that ended up being, and that's a good question.
So do we have any other revenue streams with cable providers, cell phone providers, cell phone towers? Anything else you know of?
So I did reach out to Xlink, which is one of the internet providers, and then once I got an email back from them, I was chasing a few of them around. Then I realized you have to have a PUC agreement to be able to go with them, and so then I sent that resolution or ordinance to Council Member Simeon White, and he's been working on that. There's a lot more questions than answers on that at this point, but my understanding is the PUC is very, very minimal. It's not like the franchise fee that could potentially be, $20,000 a year for the town. It's pretty minimal, and you might have more experience with that, but it's a smaller rate. It's not significant.
So I know we talked, and as I picked up these packets, just so I guess everybody kind of get a feel where I'm at on this. I asked Tara, and she had already spoken to Hunt County, I believe you said, the tax assessor office. We're trying, or we've requested to get the assessed values of the properties in the city, just so we know where we're sitting at. Nobody wants to sit up here and talk about taxes. We've already passed a franchise that eventually is going to roll out on your base rate. I mean, at some point, we're paying for it. But I think we need to be educated enough to know what our assessed values are of this town. If it's $20 million, $30 million, or $100 million, that's something we'll know. So just to know that that's been worked on. So when we're talking about revenue streams, we're not very deep in the bullpen back here on revenue streams. So obviously we got to figure out a way to save where we can and cut costs. And some of these committees talking about roads and stuff is how we're going to do that. But we do need to know what our value is.
So when I talked with Brady Ewing, the Hunt County Appraisal District GIS director, he said, we're in the middle of the tax season, and all of, a lot of you are protesting those and all the protests, and so there is a crazy time for them, of course. But he did get with me saying on just the land, now a lot of that would be an ag, remember, on just the land values. He says, I don't even know what houses are in or out. That would take hours. And of course, I think Encore's done some of that, so if we shared information, maybe that would help. But, and FEC has already done some of that legwork as well. But he said that the values were $30 million. And he was able to give, but that's not even including the houses, that's just the land. because that was something quick, because he says when you start dividing up things. So that's just Hunt County though, and so I think by July 1st, they're supposed to get that information. I did officially request that information. I think they're supposed to get that to all the municipalities, but because we're new, I'm not sure if that still applies or not. But by July 1st, they're supposed to. But I know that we have a lot of deadlines on the budget. The state requires that we have, we have a budget. And so we have all these deadlines. July 16th, last day for budget officer to file proposed budget with municipal clerk. July 25th, chief appraiser must deliver certified appraiser roll or certified estimate of taxable value to assessor. So we've got all these deadlines, and I know that we don't want to be in bad terms with the state and get sideways with them, and we need to know. So as Patricia mentioned, is something that we really need to delve into in a great way. Any comments? Is it getting late? You're getting. Okay, so there are no more discussion on that. Do we want to? Is there a motion?
What is the motion? I wish we had more.
So, is there a motion to maybe postpone this till the next meeting, or?
I think one of the things we'd be prudent in doing, Tara, I know we've talked a lot through the incorporation and through the campaigns and all about roads, but I think we're going to find out when our road committee gets going that roads are expensive. I think a lot of us know that already. We just need to set expectations that, nobody is sending us money to live off of, right? The money that we're going to live off of and make improvements with is money that's going to come from us. And I think as long as we can make reasonable arguments to ourselves and to the citizens that, listen, would you pay $50 a year, I'm just making up a number, more on your property taxes if we could improve the roads or whatever. We need to sit here and say we're never going to have a tax, I think would be absurd. We're going to have to levy some kind of a tax. And we need to probably start that discussion sooner than later, because if it has to go through a vote, we need to schedule that vote, and you wouldn't even see any revenue from that maybe for a year or two, time you get it voted on and approved and everything else. But just start managing expectations amongst ourselves and the citizens that we're not sitting on a lot of cash, and so we're not going to be repaving all of the streets in Poetry anytime soon. But we want to work towards that.
Well, my understanding is while the sales and use tax requires a vote of the people, and I think it's backwards, but I didn't make the laws. The vote for property tax is up to these 5 people on this council. Surprise. So when I learned that, I was like, oh my. So it is weighty.
I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we need to get really creative about other fundraising mechanisms before we start going into property tax. I already rent my house from the state and from the county. I don't plan on renting it from the town as well, so I know that there's going to be taxes, but property tax is one of those things that we're going to have to get real creative before I am willing to entertain that one. So just let's set that expectation appropriately. Again, from the time that I started running, I said that the more you ask from the town, the more you'll have to pay to the town. I come back again and say the same thing. The more you ask, the more you're going to have to pay. So please limit what you ask for, or be willing to pay for it, and impose that payment on future generations. Yeah.
So I will say that in 2018, our family spent $2,200 on repairs to our cars directly because of the poor road conditions. So that was alignments, that was new tires, that was directly In fact, there was a crack in the road and it actually just split my tire. I had to get a whole new tire because of the poor condition of the road. So that's $2,200 and plus the time and effort going to the mechanic and all of that is a huge hassle. And so, and that was multiple vehicles, that wasn't just mine. It was, so think about all the headache and hassle of that. So, I mean, you're gonna pay at some point, and my heart goes out to all of the people who really, the single parents, the widows, the widowers who really are struggling. And so I get that we don't, and that's why if you can get a better rate on your trash, going back to that, and maybe I can't do that, but this budget, $5, you can save $5 to the citizen, and then the town gets $4.50. I think that's a win-win, and then the town can have revenue, and that's less than we have to charge the citizen, and it's a win-win. So if you're saving $5 a month, and the town is getting $4.50 a month, that's a win in my book. And it's less money that we have to charge potentially on property tax or any of that.
But I would rather pay $1,000 a year voluntarily than be taxed $500 a year.
Yeah, I also want to avoid property tax at all costs. If we have to adopt anything like that, I want to adopt it kicking and screaming and having exhausted every other possible avenue of revenue and everybody be on board with it before I am. So any way we can avoid that, let's look at all of our options first.
In the sake of time, I'm kind of tired of beating the dead horse. Nobody wants to tax, but we're not coming up with answers. Franchise fees, trash services, all that's good. I'm tired of talking about not doing taxes. What are other ways we can fund this? Fundraisers are not going to fund the city, guys. Fundraisers fix council buildings or chambers, but they don't fund cities. So franchise fees, but there's a lot of building going on in the city. We keep talking about the city's getting smaller and it's getting to a residential community. Let's not look past contractor fees and vendor fees. Those are outside guys that they get passed on to the customer. Yeah, but being in the commercial business and building stuff, that fee's already rolled in there. They're just getting the loop to not have to pay it. So fundraisers aren't the answers. It's how are we going to get, and I hate to use the word exploit, but you exploit the people that don't live here. Charge those people the money.
Well, that brings up a good point. We know that there's some building happening on our northwestern border. So potentially 385 new homes with D.R. Horton, and that's, 700 new cars just for that one housing development alone, plus all the construction trucks, plus all the Amazon new deliveries coming on that road. So, I think it would be fair to, if we're able, to come up with a bond to charge the builder that. And then there's additional housing developments also coming into our territory. And that's on that poor Poetry Road, 249, 2458, that just had the 2 new culverts put in, that has been such a really thorn in our side, because it's become so much more traveled, and it's razor thin. I mean, it's not designed for the kind of traffic that it's currently receiving, and it really, talking with Ronnie Strait, it really needs a whole new rework, and a bond issue for those building developments, I think, would be the way to go, because we're looking at needing a whole new stretch of 3 miles of road there. That's expensive. It'd be, at least $1 million? If they're gonna have 900 new homes on one end and 385 new homes next to it, then by golly, if they're gonna, the way I feel about it is, if they're gonna make a profit by having a density of homes of 4 houses per acre, then by golly, then they can help us with that road.
See, I guess I have a question. This says for the first year, which to me, that's only the franchise fees and
the trash collection, that's the only options.
Well, sales and use could be up for vote in the fall.
I'm sorry?
A sales and use tax could be on the voting agenda for the docket for the fall.
Right, and that's longer term, but you're
Well,
not.
sales and use, if it passed, that could take place in January, could it not? If it passed in November 3rd election, that could start, so this first year, I'm talking about
Oh.
from
So you're
our
just
first fiscal year, October 1st to September 30th, and that could go ahead and.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the first year we're in.
I mean, how does that work? You would know better.
Okay, so, after you have the election, then it's the first full quarter, there's a delay. So you're usually going to lose a quarter. I can't remember exactly what the tax code says, but you send notice to the comptroller, and then you're generally gonna lose a quarter before it gets started. For sales and use tax, you can only use that, for economic development and things like that. There are limits on what you can do. You can have a road maintenance tax that is simply for roads. It's a sales and use tax, but it is strictly for maintenance of roads that are in place at the time the election occurred. It's not for construction of new roads, it's maintenance. So, there's that option, but you have to go through the election. The problem with the November election is that you're sharing the election costs with a lot less entities, and so it's always more expensive to have an election in November. More expensive to have an election in November because there are fewer entities having those November elections. In May, when you're having all the cities, and November elections are always more expensive. So.
I think we could talk about some of these later amongst the emails, revenue sourcing. But you're talking about the first year and what can we do? Construction fees, builder fees, stuff like that's easy. That's $25 to put up a building. We don't have to have building restrictions. We just have the city of Heath. I've got a building going in the Heath. They require me to pay a vendor fee. It's $25 to do business in their town, period.
Let me comment on that. Okay, so cities can have contractor registration, an annual registration. They're limited on some vendors they can't do. Contractors, construction contractors, they can. Some of the ones that are licensed by the state, you can't have that with. As far as permitting fees and things like that, those have to be only enough to cover the costs, because if they go beyond and make a profit, then it's an illegal tax. So,
But the builder fees.
the builder, it's a registration fee. In most cities, it's like $100, and it's a yearly registration, and you have to provide insurance.
I personally hate little fees like that, but that's just my opinion. And I've looked at different budgets of different small municipalities, and you consider the registration fees. Unless you start, like Lucas, Texas does, they charge quite a bit for the plating and zoning, and as far as to the contractors, they charge quite a bit, but it's not that significant of a revenue. In most of the ones I've looked at, it's just not that significant.
Patricia, would I be correct in assuming that there has to be somebody on staff that has to be paid to go make sure that the various contractors are appropriately licensed, et cetera?
That's when you get into the permitting. So that's the other thing, is that you have to have some system for having someone sign up to be a registered contractor in your city. And where they get caught is when they come in and apply for a building permit. And if someone comes to the counter and applies for a building permit, and you look them up, and you're like, okay, you're not registered, and they say, okay, well, we'll get registered. So there's a process in place for permitting, and you're gonna have to adopt permitting fees, or, into an interlocal or something with the county. I mean, I'm not sure how y'all are anticipating doing that component of it, but if people come in to build within your city, then you're going to have building permit fees, but you're also going to have to hire an inspector to go out and look at those. And as plating and zoning applications come in, you're going to have an engineer to look at civil plans for plats, and you're going to have to pay them. And usually you just pass through whatever that fee is. I mean, ordinances will say that you're gonna pay that town engineer's hourly rate or whatever. So, just the only thing I'm saying with this is that permitting fees and plan review fees and things like that are only to cover your costs. They're not a revenue profit center.
After talking with Mayor Craig, I think they originally started, this is Mayor of Union Valley, they didn't have any of the permitting fees or anything, but then they had some, I guess, fly-by-night builders who did substandard work, so then they had to start inspecting. And so that's why recently they had done that. But they've had a lot of pushback on that, because we have a lot of folks that want their freedom out here and don't want to have to do any of that. And so, but that was why they did it, because they were having so much, some substandard contractors that were not doing a good job and putting people at risk. So. Well, we have to work on a budget, so that'll be on another agenda, but that's just, we wanted to air some of this so that it's out here, and in order to do that, it has to be on here, so we'll just leave it at that. All right, so 17, woo! Discuss and consider date, time, and location of regular town council meetings. We are approved for every night and Tuesday by the Faith Temple. They've been so gracious to allow us their facility. So grateful. They've been awesome. So they've given us approval to have every Tuesday night in June and July. So I didn't want to really mess up any of their eventing, so if it could be on a Tuesday, that would be really helpful.
See, I have a question. What about Wednesday nights? That's a better night for me.
Well, I didn't know that they, a lot of times churches have events on Wednesday nights, so this being a church, I didn't really want to impose that on them.
So do you know if that's a problem, Wednesday?
I do not know. Do you have church here? Well, a lot of people have church. A lot of people have church on Wednesday nights, so that's typically, all I know is that I had a sales rep say Tuesday night, out of all 30 years that he was in business, Tuesday night wasn't a good night, and I think Patricia can attest to that because she's gone every Tuesday night for a town council meeting. But Wednesday night, a lot of people have church. It's just a church night for I think a lot of citizens.
Also, it probably should be a Tuesday or Wednesday because typically people are more attentive during meetings on specifically Tuesday, Wednesday, and it drops a little Thursday, and then Friday and Mondays are the worst. So I think for everybody's good, it should be Tuesday or Wednesday, and I prefer Tuesday anyways.
Well, if Wednesday doesn't work, Monday would be my next suggestion. I don't like Tuesday.
I would propose the second Tuesday of every month.
Second on that.
What was it?
So,
What was it?
It wasn't a motion, it was a proposal.
it was a proposal.
I like it. Second Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
Yeah, something easy to remember like that, I would appreciate. Tuesdays are good for me. I hear Tom's thing, but I'm one of those people tied up on Wednesdays for church.
Yeah. Mondays are awful for me
And
personally.
I don't want y'all to think that I would flake out on you, but I have a regular meeting on the second Tuesday of the
You
month.
do.
So
First Tuesday of the month.
I have one on that. I don't have one on the third Tuesday of the month.
Third Tuesday of the month.
What a deal.
If we choose, we can amend that. We can amend that.
It's not out there.
No, so we can.
Okay, so do we have a motion for the third Tuesday? Is that it? Now, remember that we can call a special meeting before that if we see fit, but unless we get a secretary, I need help, y'all. So, okay, so do we have a motion? Well, that's getting late.
Make a motion, third Tuesday of each month.
Seconded.
All right, so let's take a vote. All those in favor of having our, we haven't decided on time,
It
I'm
says
sorry.
time, too.
It does say time, I'm sorry. let's back up. Okay, so time. Is 6:30 agreeable? Is there a motion? You should.
So who made the motion? They need to amend it.
And it's the location, so it'd be Faith Temple?
Here, Faith Temple, was,
Oh, and here, acoustic is unbelievable.
It's live until you kill it. You just have to amend it.
Okay, I'm gonna amend that. I'll make a motion to have our meetings on the third Tuesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time at Faith Temple Baptist.
Can we amend that to central time? Because you said standard, which means that we would be out of sync during daylight saving time. So can we just say central?
No need to amend, that's it.
are we gonna second? All right, so is there a second for that? All right, all those in favor of the motion to make our regular town council meetings the third Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Here at Faith Temple, all those in favor? Raise your hand, and it passes. Okay, at this time, up number 18, we have general public comments. It's limited to 2 minutes. Was there anyone sign up for the general, Miss Dorothy? Who was that? Daryl Watson.
I'll be brief.
Okay. You have 2 minutes.
I'll do it about 30 seconds.
Okay. And remember that we can only respond with factual information because it might be something we could put on a future agenda.
It's late, we're all ready to go home. I'd like to look each one of you in the eye and say this. Wow. Just to take the initiative to do what y'all are doing, no pay, and for y'all to show up, you're going to get all kinds of flack. You've already received all kinds of flack. Public service sucks. I retired from public service, and it stinks. But the little moments when you know you've done the right thing matter. We're gonna suffer as a community, but we're gonna come out on top. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have my admiration for being willing to step up. And like Terry opened with prayer, prayers for God's guidance, for the support from the community, and for encouragement that you endure us and each other.
Thank you, Daryl. I really appreciate those kind words. Thank you very much. All right, so it is 10:26. Thank you for those who have
Motion to adjourn.
endured. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second? All those in favor? All right, we are adjourned. Put up